Welcome to the October 3rd, 2017 meeting of the Carson City Parks and Rec Commission. Madam Secretary, will you call roll?
Chairperson Keever.
Here.
Vice Chair Curtis.
Here.
Commissioner Glenn.
Here.
Commissioner Bagwell.
Here.
Commissioner Long.
Here.
Commissioner Lehman. Commissioner Cassiopo.
Here.
Quorum's present.
Thank you. All right, at this time we'll entertain public comments. Members of the public who wish to address the Parks and Recreation Commission may come forward and speak on matters related to the Commission. Comments may be limited to 3 minutes per person or topic. If your item requires extended discussion or action, please request the chairperson to schedule the matter for a future meeting. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been specifically included on an agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. Do we have any public comments?
Yes.
Right. Welcome. Please identify yourself.
Sharon Ross with Capital City Arts Initiative. Thank you for letting me make a comment. CCAI is the organization that hangs the exhibitions in this room. And I happened to be here this evening because Dylan Silver, who's this artist, is his mother, just stopped in to see the exhibition. She lives in Northern California. So I'm delighted to be here. Emily, you can wave. So I'm delighted with this particular exhibition. I hope you've enjoyed it all summer long. It'll be here through November 9th. This exhibition, Wish You Were Here, is going to be installed in the courthouse on Thursday. The reception is Friday evening, and we'd love for you to come. The artist, unfortunately, will not be here. She's undergoing some more chemotherapy, and she lives in Las Vegas. So it's sort of a very sad week to have a Las Vegas connection. Also, on this little bookmark, we do a series of Nevada Neighbors Talks 4 times a year. The talk this time is in conjunction with the new exhibition in the courthouse. Michelle Quinn, who's a curator, is from Las Vegas. She is coming, and she's going to be talking about public art and things going on in Las Vegas that have enhanced the cultural environment down there. So you might like to come here. She'll be having slides and showing pieces of some pretty amazing pieces that are down in Las Vegas. So I think that's it. Do you have any questions?
Lori?
I'll just comment how much I have enjoyed this particular exhibition. It's been one of my favorite. Looking straight ahead, it's like, oh, that picture's for me. So
good.
Thank you for all your good work and for bringing us the art and to the artist's parents. I really do enjoy it.
Thank you, Laurie. Thanks a lot. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you can join us Friday night.
Any other public comments? CK, you going to let us down? I did.
Well, bless your hearts all. For the record, C.K. Bailey. I want to make mention on this artwork. I'm going to miss it. This is leaving here. This is sad. What these wonderful photos are doing, and I was talking with the wonderful young lady who just spoke about what is happening deep in Lake Tahoe and how long it takes one of those trees to become that large, which means that water was not there for a very long time. Drought is not an unusual circumstance in Nevada, obviously, and not unusual at Lake Tahoe. And I really, truly will miss these pictures. They are just a phenomenon, just beautiful art. So thank you. I just want to mention. So thank you for having them here. It's been just a blessing to have them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other public comments? All right, let's move on to agenda item 2. Modifications to the agenda. Commissioner Curtis, you had requested that your all right, so we won't have any modifications to the agenda. Where are the minutes? Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped over that. All right.
Moving right along.
Moving
She
right
was.
along. Yes, I was.
Appreciate it.
Well, you know, I wanted to, anyway. All right, let's go back to item number 1 for possible action on approval of minutes from our August 1st, 2017 meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review them? Any comments, questions, concerns?
I thought they looked fine. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Or, hang on a second. Thank you. August 1st, 2017.
Excellent. All right. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any public comment? Do we have any comments from the commissioners? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. The motion's unanimous. All right. Now, Commissioner Curtis, you don't need us to modify the agenda for
No,
yourself?
thank you.
Okay.
It's okay.
All right, then let's move on to agenda item 3, meeting items. Number A, Park Program of the Month, presentation and discussion on park maintenance by David Navarro. David, are you ready to entertain us?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Madam Chair, Supervisor Bagwell, and the rest of the commissioners. Today's presentation is on the parks operations maintenance, and just gives an overview. So, who are we? The park staff is composed of a parks operations manager, 2 parks coordinator, 1 sports field coordinator, a parks shop coordinator, 8 park maintenance workers, seasonal maintenance workers, and also prison inmate trustees. Within the staffing here, we have 20+ years experience in landscape maintenance, installation, and also in the private and public sector. In addition to that, a lot of our staff have either has college credits or worked on sports fields, landscapes, and have also done turf maintenance and installation. We have had some of our staff that has worked at some major colleges and universities, and we even have a couple staff that have worked on award-winning AAA baseball facility up in Reno. We do have a parks mechanic who is certified in steel and Honda products. Also within the staff here, we have a certified pesticide applicator, certified playground inspector, and a backflow tester as well. And most of our park maintenance workers will have their commercial driver's license as well. And just to give you an idea of some of the certifications and some of the background of our employees, our seasonal maintenance worker average 10 to 14 each year, and they usually are on staff between March and October. Usually after that, in the winter months, that's when we usually cut back to the seasonal maintenance workers. What are some of the stuff that we do? These are some of what we consider our general park maintenance, and could even be some of the core things that the parks maintenance staff does. And you can see it's a pretty good list of stuff. What's some of the general things we do is we do all the mowing in the parks, edging, the fertilizing, also like the aerification and weed abatement, pruning, trash removal. We also do a lot of work on the irrigation throughout all of our parks, and that includes the adjustment, repairs, and also installation, and also the winterization of those as well. We do have bathroom facilities in a handful of our parks, so we are the ones who go in there and clean up after events or just after regular day use. We take care of the vandalism, and any graffiti, as well as if there's a backstop or any fences that are in the park area as well. We do general maintenance to those and what we can do in-house. Obviously, if it's something greater, it needs greater like repair, we contract that out. But most of the stuff we try to do in-house. You know, we try to base all of our cores off of the levels of service that were established in 2006 for the Carson City Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and so anything that we do is based on those levels of service. In the winter months, so our bulk of the season goes from March 1st to November 1st. That's when we do all of these types of maintenance practices. And then in the winter months, we do some of our projects and some of our cleanups. Some of those projects could be the painting of all the trash cans in our parks, the reconditioning of our picnic tables and so on. And that's when we do a lot of our winter pruning as well to all of our trees and landscapes throughout the park systems. So in addition to just a general maintenance, you know, we do have 3 sports complexes, and all of the things that you saw in the previous slide are done at our sports complexes. But then there are a few other things that are just specific to those, and that is like the daily field setup for practices and for games, like the dragging of the infields, the chalking, and the paintings of all the lines, and also the game day preparation and any renovations that we do at the sports complexes, which could be like a rebuilding of a pitcher's mound, reestablishing some of the infields from the grass overgrown, and just projects like that. Some of the other duties that we do besides just those, like the core ones, we do special events, let's see, setups, and that can include fairs, the carnival, well, excuse me, that does include fairs, the carnivals, Nevada Day Parade, any event downtown, sports tournaments, dog show, car shows, community cleanup days, you name it, we have a hand in some way or another. And in addition with those events, goes with the equipment setup that we have, and we have mobile stages, bleachers, picnic tables, trash cans. We do have equipment for power needs as well, and tables and chairs that we do set out for the majority of those special events. And it can vary from a couple tables to 40, 50, 60 tables to 10 or 20 chairs, all the way up to 700 chairs. So, and to continue on with some of the other duties, you know, we are the Parks and Rec system, but we do have a cemetery, so some of our staff are involved in burials. We do also a lot of non-turf landscape maintenance, and what I mean by non-turf landscaping, most of the parks do have a landscaping component in it where they have trees and shrubs and some rock areas, but these are the areas that are located along the streets and highways that we maintain that don't necessarily have a park feature in it, but they do have walking paths and such that go through them. One of the bigger ones that we do is College Parkway, and that goes from all the way from WNC all the way to Highway 50. So any landscaping that's along the road there, we're the ones who are doing the maintenance in there. Then we do let's see, snow removal in the winter. We have a trash truck during our heavy season, which is from March 1st to October 1st, that runs 5 days a week and hits all of our parks, and we do the flower baskets. We put them out, we take them down. Up until this year, we were also involved in watering them and fertilizing them, which was a 7-day-a-week process. And then we're also involved with the downtown Christmas lights as well, all the lights that are around the poles. We have continued to put those up and change them out if they go out. So we've done that. And then also like a rink setup, you know, I have that in here. That's the roller hockey rink that is in the Marv Tech Sarah pavilion. We put that up this time of year. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to start that here soon, and it'll come down in May. Moving right along. So here's some of the areas, breakdown of the areas that we do service. The Parks and Rec Department is composed of 8,000 acres of land in the department. Within that, there is a 785 developed acres. So, and within the developed acres, we have 24 parks. And the parks are kind of broken down into neighborhood parks like John Mencken's, Carriage Square, Ross Gold, and the regional parks are Mills Park and Fuji Park. Those are the ones that get the majority of our reservations and have special events at them, but also have multiple things inside those parks. We have 26 non-turf landscape sites, 3 sports complexes, Pete Livermore, Governor's Field, Johnny Winters. We have 3 cemeteries. Lone Mountain, Empire, and we also have a pet cemetery that's by the corporate yard. And in addition to that, we have a rifle range, archery range, rodeo, let's say arena. We do also have 20 public buildings that we maintain the turf and the landscaping as well, and that's buildings like the community center here, the sheriff's office, the courthouse, everything around there we maintain and throughout the city. And also we have 11 paved and unpaved trails that we maintain that is within the city, and a lot of those are not in the open space areas. They're along the freeways, along our parks and other areas like that. So who uses our facilities and what type of users do we have? We have our recreation program, our adult recreation program. They have about 1,000 activities at the John D. Winters Centennial Park location on the east end of town. We have our local youth sports, and within that there's about 1,200 activities in there through all of our sports complexes. We also have nonprofits. We have regional school districts. In the spring months, we get a lot of the schools from the Lake Tahoe area who cannot get on their fields yet, so they generally are getting hold of us to see if they can rent out our facilities for their use. This past year, they were calling us in November, and we've already got a couple reservations already in October. They are anticipating, I guess, not being able to use their facilities. So we have those guys come in usually February and March. And then we also have other sports organizations as well. One of the bigger ones is All World Sports that runs a lot of their tournaments on the weekends, mainly at John D. Winters Centennial Sports Complex, but they do have a couple larger events that they'll use Governor's Field and also Pete Livermore Sports Complex as well. And then we have our local and our regional clubs as well. Here's some numbers just to give everybody an idea of what a typical year might involve and what kind of activities that we will have. We used to have on the average 3 carnivals. A 4th one was added this past year. We usually average about 13 dog shows at Fuji Park. We have 9 regional soccer tournaments at the Pete Livermore Sports Complex. We have 3 city-sponsored events, and when I say city-sponsored, it's not only are we involved, but there's like the fire department, the sheriff, Public Works. So those are pretty big events. And then we have 23 Carson City Visitor Bureau sponsored events. That's not the total of events that are sponsored, but those are the ones that have the direct impact on us and our facilities. And you can see we have, it's been divided out into youth baseball, softball, and adult softball, and soccer as well. Usually those all world sports, youth baseballs and softball tournaments can average between 200 to 300 games in a 2-day period. So when they come in, they're in. It's like F5 like tornado, and then they're out, and then it's like, okay, let's get it back together. Some of the challenges that we face usually on a year in and year out basis is a seasonal workforce. We've had an interesting year this year with our seasonal employment, and it was down. Last year we averaged about 11.8. If I think I calculated like the numbers, almost 12 seasonal employees per week for a 30-week like span, and this year we're at 8.4 seasonal employees per week in a 30-week like span. So we've lost. We haven't been able. We're down about 3.5 seasonals this year compared to last year, and within that, qualified employees. I used to get applications in. I used to get people who would come in and want to work as a seasonal employee, and they would have some background in landscape maintenance, working for a company, working for a college, working for a golf course, and now we're just not getting that. We're just getting pretty much anybody who walks in the door because we've been down, and we have to teach them all new things. We have to show them things like this is a mower, this is a weed eater, this is a park. So it's been a challenge this year. It truly has. And then our prison inmate trustee program, it's actually been it's been with us since 2005, and they have been a great addition to us, and we couldn't do some of the things without that program. But there's some turnover, and the skill set is not quite there as our seasonal or our full-time, and so it's a challenge with them at times to get them to do things and to get them to understand why we do those things. So we do have some challenges, but all in all, it's a pretty diverse group, and we get a lot done. Another one of our challenges is our aging equipment. We have some playgrounds out there that were installed around like 1990, and I think our latest playground was installed in 2006, and that was the first year that I started here. I think those were the last ones that were installed. Some of our riding equipment and some of our other this hand equipment was last purchased in 2002, and a lot of them have many hours on them. Some of those things, it's recommended that they have 2,000 to 3,000 hours on them. Some of our equipment's at like 4,000 or 5,000. We even have a couple equipments up there, 6,000 hours that are on them. So it's, they break down, and they're down. When they're down, they're usually down for like a long period of time. And then also increasing events over the years. We have events that are coming into town. We have more events that are being sponsored by the Visitors Bureau, and so with that comes a greater need to have it in our facilities and provide the things that we can. So some of the future projects and so some of the things that we have coming up here. We do have some equipment upgrades scheduled for this year. We were really successful in this last like CIP, so we do have some money to replace like a playground. We're also looking at replacing one of our infield maintenance machines. We did get a new mower earlier this year, and we do have some funds to get another mower, and also like a utility trailer to especially help us out when we're doing our cleanups. And we're also looking at doing asphalt, concrete, and dirt path repairs this year. Some irrigation system upgrades, especially at the Pete Livermore Sports Complex. We have an irrigation head replacement plan already in place, and we already have the funds for it. So, and once we do that, we expect some really good results from that. We have some aging bridges at Mills Park that need to be replaced, and we also have a sewer upgrade at the John D. Winters Centennial Sports Complex that's in need, and so that's going to happen this year. A couple of the other things that we are going to do is we're going to do an asset inventory and replacement plan this year. And starting this month, we're going to go around and do an inventory of all of our parks, infrastructures, and equipment as well, come up with a replacement plan, and also come up with a replacement index as well. And I think that'll give us a better idea of where we're at, where the greatest need is. And then we also are going to implement a request tracker application. Some of the departments already in the city are using this, and it's kind of a work order based system. And after talking with our IT department, I thought that this would be a great tool for us to use, not so much for as a work request, but to track our workload. With it, we can track, we can really pretty much track anything that we do, hours, equipment used, manpower, and then we can run from that. Let's see, tables to see where we're at, where we're spending most of our time doing, and where most of our equipment is. How long is it taking our mower to drive from the Parks Department to Mills Park? And that's some of the things that we can track and see if we can streamline some of that stuff. With that, we just like to say thank you. I'd like to say thank you to my staff. We have a very diverse staff, and also our staff is very energetic, and they do have a passion for what they do, and they work hard, and you can see at the end of the day, this is what they look like most of the time. They walk out like with a smile, and so we enjoy it, and we are happy to be here and happy to do what we are doing for not only for the citizens and for the public, but also for the visitors as well. Any questions?
Any comments or questions? Commissioner Curtis?
Thanks. I really appreciate this. As it says notes on the agenda, I did request this. There's a couple of reasons I did that, but first of all, I want to say that, I've been on this commission for a long time, and ever since I've been on it, people have been commenting from Tahoe, Reno, Sacramento, whatever, how great our parks are. That they would rather come over here and play tournaments because our grounds are always better and conditioned and all this kind of thing. So you do a marvelous job considering. But the two reasons why I asked that this be put on is because we've had a hard winter this year. We had all the flood damage, and then we had a very prolific spring. And so at least at a couple of parks that I'm aware of, people have been upset, I guess, because they don't think the parks have been maintained to their usual standards. And obviously, with more work to do because of the weather and more foliage to deal with and the foxtails, etc., it's hard to keep up with it. But I did want you to comment on that in terms of, because we may have another hard winter coming. It looks like it. Anyway, there's still water in the creek at Long Ranch, and there's never water in the creek at Long Ranch. So if there's already water in it, what's going to happen if we get a lot of fluids this year? And the other reason, it may do more with the later item that's on the agenda that Supervisor Bagwell wanted to put on, talking about the events. But there are more events, as you say. And so I don't know if we want to discuss this now or discuss it later on, but I do want to get an idea of what, in your mind, you think is happening with more events. Your staff have to be involved in those setups, and sometimes it may be taking away from the days you have to maintain the parks. Like if you have to start on Thursday, you may have several staff involved with that, instead of going as usual to such and such park and doing the maintenance that you have. I don't know, but it sounds to me that we're kind of in a stressful situation. And I guess another question I have is, ideally at this point in time, would you want more permanent staff? And if so, how many would you need in order to actually accomplish all these things that you mentioned? That's a lot, but go for it.
Okay, first of all, Commissioner Curtis, thank you for the comments. Yes, I have also been to places as well in the area here and also outside the area, and I know of organizations and sports teams that have come to our area and have come up to me and said, you know, wow, your guys' like facilities that you have are top notch, and they enjoy coming here and they enjoy playing here. That's one of the reasons why we have the District Little League All-Star here every year, because none of the other local Little Leagues in the area, one, want to put on that big tournament, but can, and provide the facilities that they can. So again, thank you very much, and the staff, you know, they work hard and they appreciate it, so thank you. On the other comment there, you know, what ideally, you know, but I think I mentioned it earlier, you know, that our seasonal staff is down this year, and I did some math, and sorry, I don't have those numbers so you guys can see them, but it calculated out to about, we are down 4,000 man hours this year. You know, it was like 3,920 like man hours that we are down at this point this year. We did have a harsh winter that created some issues with our maintenance plan. We had to start later. We are typically, you know, we are right now 2 months behind than where we are typically at this time of year. You know, we've usually done some of our fall pruning and cleanup in our landscape areas and in our parks. Usually around August is when we start that. Well, we're just starting that right now at this point. So we are, you know, we are about 2 months behind than we previously are, and a lot of it has to do with the manpower that we have. Those special events that come in, yes, they do have an impact. When those special events start, we are pretty much a 7-day-a-week operations, and we have to adjust some of our seasonal workers' schedules. They don't typically work, all of them work Monday through Friday. We have a crew that works either Friday through Tuesday or Thursday through Sunday to help us out, Thursday through Monday to help us out with those events. But by doing that, though, it takes away from some of the things that we can do during the week. Some of our core maintenance stuff, because we just don't have the staff there to do everything. So when we look at the levels of services that we can provide, you know, we got to go through that and say, okay, what do we absolutely have to keep at level 1? You know, what can we go down to level 2 and or possibly even go down to level 3? You know, it's some tough choices, and you know, some of the weeds are going to have grown tall and, you know, have gotten out of control, but we have come back into those areas and taken all that out. We just haven't gotten back to it as fast as we would have like before, and of course we would like to. So, and I think some of this conversation is going to continue and come up again in the next presentation that I have with the staff report. You know, I can continue that then, or I can continue on here. So.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Long?
Well, first, I think you guys do a great job, and obviously, you stated when you're down 3 guys all summer long, and we followed it with flood damage and a lot of cleanup. Then I guess it's to be expected. I hope we get a huge snow, but I hope we don't have this huge flooding either. So anyway. But I think we can continue maybe the talks in the next topic also. But I guess part of that is going to be looking at ways like to maybe do some load sharing or whatever, and possibly would it make sense to hire some outside services at some point just to help bridge that gap, or maybe they already have trained employees anyway. So I think that's just one idea, and I don't know what that costs or whether that's really a viable option or not, but just an idea.
Commissioner Bagwell?
So, and I also wanted to mention it, I don't think it's in your slides, but that you guys also started this year doing like a community project as the whole parks team where you went somewhere. So I really wanted to say that I think that's a great idea too, because it shows the community that that, again, you're going to go tackle a project as a team, and it really showed the work that was accomplished there. And so I just want to say thank you, because I think it's noticed by the community that, wow, they really went into, Governor's Field and look at all that work. And anytime that you can hook up with some of the Boy Scout groups and all those other projects that are going on, and that we could even bring and build a bigger bridge to that, is just superb. And again, please thank your staff for all that good community work.
Supervisor Lizzie Bagwell, thank you so much for those wise comments. Interesting, that you said. I do have that slide that's on the bottom there. That's that of our work day that we had at Governor's Field, and that came from the idea from Jim Budge, our director, and so we pulled the staff together. It doesn't come out real good on that, but if you look real close to my face, I got paint all over my face from we were painting and everything. So, but we do have some other projects that are coming up. We're doing a Parks Department cleanup day at the rifle range, and that's going to be October 11th. And in addition to that, the NJROTC program at the high school is going to be doing their volunteer day at Lone Mountain Cemetery. We're going to have approximately 200 to 220 cadets out there to do mass cleanup of the cemetery, and that's going to be October 21st.
It's just great. And I think it's, again, I just think any time that we can hook up with volunteers in the community, it can really, I don't want to clean up, but it is, right? It can really make an impact and a big difference. Let's all tackle the Lone Mountain Cemetery. Let's all get the rifle range cleaned. Maybe we can go to this park, and let's all, as a community, really work on it. So again, thank you very much.
Excuse me, Commissioner Cacioppo.
I was just going to add to that. I know, parks helps. There's always an agreement with the school district, and there's a maintaining of the fields and whatnot, and that's, first of all, always greatly appreciated. And like Commissioner Bagwell said, anytime there's a chance to share resources, an example, several years ago, when I was helping coaching cross country for the high school, we had some kids marking the trails to make sure that the slower kids, if you will, knew where they were going. And some kids got a little creative with how permanent their markings were. And nonetheless, the kids went back up there, cleaned everything off and whatnot. But in going up there, the kids went up and did a lot of cleaning that wasn't caused by them. And, and so there's a partnership right there. I mean, you get these kids that may not mind hiking hills the way some of the adults might, not enjoy hiking hills. And anyway, I mean, my point is reach out to the schools too, and we'd be happy to help out if you're falling short somewhere. I'm sure we could figure something out.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Curtis?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you on that asset management plan. You're going to start it now. Do you have any idea when it might be complete?
Yes, our completion date right now is set to be sometime around the 1st of January, so we can have it in place for our next budget cycle when we start to talk about CIP like requests and everything. So that's the target date, like right now.
All right. Any public comments? CK, come on down.
Once again, C.K. Bailey for the record. I am uncertain if there is any way that I could possibly repay Parks and Recreation for what has happened on the south side of town, i.e. Bailey Fishing Pond, which, by the way, should probably be mentioned in your next slideshow. It's a huge, huge responsibility. It was breached no less than 3 times due to the flooding that occurred this year. That was not in the budget, I'm certain. And, gosh, there's so much to say about it. Parks and Rec's been very, very good to me. Aging equipment, well, I probably resemble that. And as far as volunteering, That was meant to, you can laugh, that's all right. I'll take it from you, Lori, that's fine. Sure. Well said, Vice Chair Curtis and
What about aging equipment?
no, about what Parks and Rec does for this community, Northern Nevada, people that come to visit this community from far away from other countries and come here to recreate, to meet their families or family members, and to find something to do, which also brings up, well, there's nothing for young people to do in Carson City. So untrue, so short-sighted. All they have to do is turn on a PC, go downtown, find a park. There is such a diversity in our parks that is inexpensive for the public to go to and have and recreate, sport or recreate. Speaking of Bailey Pond, which I know a little bit about, not much, according to the biologists from the Nevada Department of Wildlife, and I probably said this before, it is the most utilized urban fishery in the entire Endow urban fishing pond system. That includes southern Nevada as well. That's huge. That is very huge. And it's next door, very accessible to young and old, all ages. And even if you don't fish, it's in a very appealing place to just hang out and have a sandwich. It's a lovely place. It is a beautiful park. So, parks from top to bottom, as far as I'm concerned, has been thoroughly accommodating to me, my constituents, and my family, and just everyone I know. So I can't thank Parks and Recreation enough. Period.
Thank you for those kind words. I'm sure staff appreciates them.
I appreciate you too.
All right, are there any other public comments? Jennifer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I'm sure you know that CK is our #1 volunteer. He is out at Fuji all the time, and it wouldn't look like it does without all of his blood, sweat, and tears literally out there. He's wonderful. I did want to update you. We have 2 AmeriCorps Vistas right now on staff. Our 3rd one is coming on at the end of November, and that's going to be our volunteer coordinator. And one of their jobs is to develop an Adopt a Park program, maybe an Adopt a Trail program, maybe adopt an open space, who knows what, but to create opportunities for volunteers, community groups, individuals to be more engaged with our park system and to help us, because we need help. We need more boots on the ground, especially these large-scale efforts. So, and I did want to invite all of you to October 11th, our all-staff parks work day at the rifle range. So it'll be from 8 to noon, and then we're going to have a barbecue after. You're all welcome to come. We do have the nonprofit group that operates the range for us coming out, and some of the volunteers out there helping. But it needs a lot of attention, so we're going to try to throw all our staff at it and have a good time while we're at it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Moving on, shall we? All right. Are we going to take any action on this, or? Nope, just move on. Okay. All right, let's move on to smoking. Presentation by Carson City Health and Human Services regarding smoke-free efforts throughout Carson City. Discussion and possible feedback to the Regional Smoke-Free Action Committee for Parks. Faith Barber and Jennifer Budge. Okay. 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 Faith, please introduce yourself and share with us what you're going to share.
Hi, my name is Faith Barber from Carson City Health and Human Services. I'm a community health worker there, and I also work with tobacco and in the non-smoking side of tobacco. Will it stay on? Okay, thank you. Okay, so as you can see, we want to talk to you a little bit about healthy living in a healthy environment. So let's see what we got here. Oh, there we go. I didn't know if you guys were aware that almost 84% of our Carson City residents, adult residents, do not smoke, which is pretty high. And the Surgeon General of the United States reports there's no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. Secondhand smoke continues to be the third leading cause of preventable death in the U.S. And that's just good for our youth, you know, to try and keep them healthy, to stay away from that secondhand smoke. Okay. Tobacco and smoke-free venues and living encourages families to attend events. A lot of times people say, I don't think, keep going. Oh, okay. I don't think that people will come if we tell them no smoking. That's just simply not true. That's not true. People will come, and they do enjoy the smoke-free. Tobacco and smoke-free events help prevent and initiation of tobacco and smoking in adolescents and young adults. It really sets the tone if the children aren't seeing, you know, adults out there smoking, and it keeps them from starting at a younger age. And then we get to some of the stuff we were just discussing. Cigarettes are the most littered item on earth. Cigarettes are poisonous to our children, pets, and animals when eaten. If a dog eats 2 or 3 butts, it's very sick. If not, you know, if it doesn't cause it to pass away. Cigarette butts contain toxic chemicals which contaminate soil and our water. So that's really something to think about too. Fire hazard, human and property costs by careless smoking, over $6 billion annually. Improperly discarded cigarettes and other smoking materials starts fires. And every second, 142 butts are flicked out of a car, thrown in grass or stubble on the sidewalks. And I'm sure that Parks doesn't want to have to clean all that up. And here we go, the maintenance costs. Cleanup of tobacco litter from sidewalks, streets, and recreational areas is costly. San Francisco did an impact study, and the cleanup cost was 22 cents per pack. And the litter audit for San Francisco found it cost $7 million annually to clean up tobacco litter. And that's the taxpayers and local authorities bear that cost. That's a lot from just cigarette butts and packages and things like that. We did a little survey of our own up at WNC before they went smoke-free. And in 2 hours, we picked up like 4 big containers of butts. I mean, it was a lot, and a few of the packages, but it was mostly just the small butts filling these big pickle jars. So that's just something to think about, too. And thank you for your time and consideration in keeping Carson City clean. Carson City Health and Human Services assist in temporary signage for smoke-free events. So I think you've noticed them around at some of the fairs and stuff with some of the events that have gone smoke-free with us, and we have helped put the signs out. And as you notice, they're not the big old "you're bad" red "don't smoke" signs. They're friendly and welcoming, and as much as you can be. And they're also permanent, and we can help supply those too. So we really hope that you guys will consider going smoke-free with our trails and help joining in Northern Nevada, going smoke-free for parks and open spaces. And do you have any questions?
Any questions? Commissioner Curtis?
Thank you very much. We've had 2 discussions here while I've been on the commission about trying to make parks smoke-free. I think the primary issue was the sheriff was concerned about enforcement. So the best we could do was, I believe there are some signs, I'll be honest with you, I haven't checked the playgrounds lately, but there should be signs like, say, something like children's lungs at work, or, you know, the idea of the friendly reminder and asking people not to smoke, you know, around playgrounds especially. But that's the best that we've done so far. I definitely agree with you. It'd be nice that, you know, if you're trudging up a trail, that you're not, you know, inhaling somebody else's cigarette smoke. But anyway, just to let you know, if you weren't aware of it, that, you know, we have discussed this before. I don't know if it's time to do it again or not, but or whether the conclusion would be the same. But would like to help if we, you know, if there's any way we could, I think.
Right. We thank you for that. Basically, we're looking at social enforcement. We're not looking for somebody to go out and police and tell people you can't smoke, but just a friendly reminder. Hey, you know, this is a smoke-free area. We have children that are playing and impressionable minds. You know, we would like to try and influence our children from the get-go. You know, we don't want, you know, the coaches and stuff standing out there smoking cigarettes and things like that. So,
See the larger sign?
Yes.
Will you let us see that larger one? Because for the health of the community, smoke-free, Carson, you think. So I don't know that that one actually says you can't do something, and it doesn't quote an ordinance, and it doesn't quote anything up there. So I'm wondering if there's truly an issue with putting that in locations. It's just asking people to keep this as a smoke-free area. It's an ask, not a command or not an ordinance, not something you're going to get a ticket for. But certainly I don't see an issue with putting that. Try it in a few areas even and see if you even get public comment, see if people call you. It'd be interesting to see if we did a little test somewhere and I don't know, you know, maybe we'd just check it out. But would you also give those, is that only for events that you can give those placards to people, or can you do that for businesses that maybe want to also put it in their windows or something and say, you can't smoke in my business, because you can't do it in a restaurant, but maybe some more places would like some of those signs, so can they contact you to get those signs?
Yes, we can definitely. It's open. We are really supporting Carson City getting as smoke-free as possible, and I think some of the surrounding areas are leaning towards the same thing, and we would like to be a leader, you know, do it before the others, you know, instead of, oh, you know, oh, well, Washoe did it, let's us do it too now. We'd like to be one of the first. Carson first, yeah.
Commissioner Cacioppo, did you have something?
Sure, just briefly. You touched on what I was going to say, so I just want to say thank you. I think this is an important public service to get out to people. You know, Carson City has been deemed a bicycle-friendly, a running-friendly community. We have a lot of trails, you know, like we just heard from the previous presentation. A lot of activities going on here, and so anything we can do to encourage folks to consider not smoking, I think is for me, is the right thing to do. And I can honestly say I've never smoked running up a trail in my life. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you. I think this is important.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did want to thank Faith, and then her colleague Sandy has been really wonderful in helping us kind of talk about positive messages out into the community. We're here to promote positive, healthy lifestyles, and how can we continue to do that? As a segue in the second part of your agenda item, and this is not an action item, I really want to just have more of a discussion and get your feelings on this topic. We are participating in a regional action group called the Smoke-Free Action Group for Parks. It's consisting of Carson City, Washoe County, City of Sparks, and City of Reno, representatives from all the parks commissions. Commissioner Keever is your representative. I attend as well as Sandy from the Health and Human Services Department. And they've asked the 4 questions, your fancy little sheet in front of you. They've asked these 4 questions of all those parks commissions, and the next meeting, we're to report back to just see how you guys feel about each of these things, and you've sort of already broached the subject a little bit. We're not the first, we'd be, maybe the first in here, but across the nation, this is really a movement, and the National Recreation and Park Association is encouraging these type of healthy efforts. But each organization in the end decides to what level and what limit and what's reasonable. You talk about enforcement, you talk about challenges. Obviously the lifestyle in like a sports complex is, with an adult activity, is a little different than areas that are maybe promoted to youth. So, there's a lot of strong feelings either way. But I just wanted to see sort of how you guys were feeling on each of these areas. If we do pursue these positive messages and signage and incorporating that maybe in our activity guide and in our programs and teaching our youth, and I think having it part of our culture is a really easy operational thing to do. Do we want to institute a policy or even go to the point of having an ordinance where our park rangers could cite if they see something? What would that look like? I don't know how you feel. Maybe we could start there, a policy versus an ordinance. Do you have any strong feelings either way?
Okay. Go ahead. I like the idea of having that discussion and seeing if it makes sense. I'm curious, do we have any data, our local fires, do we have any data that can tie anything back to, we always know this is from a campfire, this is from this and that. Anything that ties it back to smoking or?
I don't have anything, but I think we could probably get that.
And I'm sure
I think Sandy probably be a great resource at the health department to provide that. Definitely
we have
shooting is obviously
if we're going to have that discussion.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions? Commissioner Curtis?
Well, during our discussions before, we were aware of other jurisdictions that had ordinances.
There's hundreds across the country.
Yes. So, maybe some information on how those are working in terms of the enforcement issue, which seemed to be the primary concern, would be helpful in terms of having a, rounded discussion on it. I had a question on that 83% non-smokers. How does that compare, say, to Washoe or other areas like where we have the 24/7 lifestyle, or the casinos and everything?
I'm not real sure, but I believe it's pretty close. I believe it's pretty close in northern Nevada. But I wouldn't want you to quote me on that. But Sandy usually does all this, and I'm learning so that I can assist her better. So this is good practice for me with you guys, so that I can learn the information that I need to when I am presenting. This is my first time, so thank you.
Well, you're doing a great job. And Faith, I had a question. What methodology was used to determine that 83%? Yeah, how did we arrive at that figure of the non-smoking? Nobody came to my house and said who smokes here or doesn't smoke, so.
I believe it's from surveys and in the.
So we just took a cross section of the population and then extrapolated the end result?
How about up here? How many in this room right now smoke? Wonder if 83% of us right here in this room do not smoke. Does anyone smoke?
That's a very scientific study that you're conducting, Lori.
Yeah, but I think example. You can get 20 people, that's right, you can get 20 people together.
Coming from a statistical background, I don't consider it valid.
I can follow up with Sandy and we can get you the answers on
Yes.
that. Yeah. So can we just talk really quickly, if we did pursue a policy or an ordinance, whatever direction, moving forward, if you wanted to pursue something, would you want it to cover all of our parklands, specific locations? Do you have any concerns or feelings about sports complexes in particular? That was a real hot button in the city of Reno. I'll give you an example. They were really concerned about tobacco use and the impact of that. Not just from a maintenance perspective, it is definitely part of that adult lifestyle. Those sporting activities moving forward, they really felt like it would be too hard to enforce at the adult venues, but at the youth venues, maybe prohibiting them in all whatever youth, but they didn't have the ability for enforcement. That was another issue with them. They don't have a typical park ranger system like we do.
Commissioner Glenn has a comment.
Yeah, we must have policies now, or the Little League has been enforcing or attempting to enforce a no smoking policy at Governor's Fields without the authority to do so. So I guess because we've got signs on our field saying there's no smoking at the fields, that you have to go out to the parking lot. Mm-hmm. And so I guess my question is that, do we have a policy at these fields right now?
I think there's an informal one. And there was some signage that's, I would say, inconsistently signed throughout our park system. So some locations, like you're saying, do have some signage. We don't have anything in ordinance to cite. But you can, if you see someone throw something down, you can cite them for littering. You can, so there's other ways around it without having a specific one right now to enforce it. But I do think we need improved signage, improved messaging to do that, and we need to do that with the leagues, especially at our youth venues. But I think the controversial side is that adult portion, and I'm not sure how you guys feel about that, the culture of that sporting activity at adult activities.
Commissioner Long?
Yeah, Commissioner Glenn, I was just curious, how effective do you feel that those signs have been? Just apparently, if it's not, it doesn't trace back to an ordinance, has it been effective, and are people upset about it, or how what have you witnessed?
I think they're actually pretty effective in terms of keeping smoking contained to the parking lot. Not so much because the signs are there, but it's combined the signs with a proactive approach from adults, volunteers. I mean, it's fairly well known that at Governor's, no smoking is tolerated near the fields. And so if anyone even attempts to smoke a cigarette, people will politely say, hey, you need to go out to the parking lot. Same thing with dogs at the fields. They're not allowed. There's food there. We don't want to have an incident with a dog, disturbing someone else so it's the same thing. If there's a dog there, a lot of time, one of the volunteers will point it out. Tailgating on what you just said, I don't think there's any question that, like you say, it would be great to have, at the very least, a policy, if not an ordinance, around any youth events, or at the very least having a smoking, area. Even Disneyland will have a small area at the park which is you're allowed to smoke, or 2 locations, and that's it. And so if you have a designated area, at the very least, even at I'm going to guess you're referring to, say, Centennial, when they do their all-night softball tournaments and whatnot, or at the very least, you'd have some place where they could go so other people aren't disturbed, as well as hopefully no littering. Where people are going to be enjoying the parks and enjoying the facilities, as well as having a hard and fast no smoking policy around children's events.
Commissioner Curtis?
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking in terms of, some of the other areas, like when we have these events, the carnivals, the car shows, culturally that may be a little different than a Little League game. And so I don't know whether we would treat those differently. There'd be more smokers there. I don't know. But maybe the idea of a designated area would be a good one to have somewhere there too. And I was also going to ask, about the schools. Have you been working with the schools? Are they, or maybe you know, do they have discussions about smoking and talk about, that this kind of thing, or?
WNC is now a smoke-free campus, and the health department's been supporting them, helping with signage. On the back of their facility abuts one of our trails. There's actually a sign on the WNC property, but encourages no smoking in that area and when recreating. So that is something that the school district, that the colleges, UNR is a tobacco-free campus now. So there's large movements for that. It sounds like you were all leaning toward having specific locations at all of our facilities, at our regional facilities. I'm not sure where you want to go. I know Washoe County was really concerned about, like, if you go to a wedding and you go outside to smoke, and then if you can't smoke in that entire park, you're going across the street, and they're just really remote. They didn't want someone that maybe had a couple cocktails at a wedding to, they just didn't want to create additional problems. So they felt, I used to work there. I know it's at Washoe, right? But they wanted to have some specific locations, especially at their regional facilities. Not necessarily that it wasn't as big of a concern at like the neighborhood parks, but more of the regional, having a location where it's okay to go. But definitely not tolerated at youth activities has been sort of the sentiment of that group.
For the Carson City Fair, the carnival that we had, they went with 2 designated areas, and it seemed to be
They were ignored. When we were there, people were smoking wherever they wanted.
Right.
And I believe the bigger issue at some of our carnivals and fairs are actually the employees rather than the people attending the event itself. So I think some of that, if we institute policies or procedures, they're going to be in their permit when they rent our facility to use that, and their employees and their contractors and such would have to abide by those rules, whatever direction we choose to go into. So we can work with those event organizers, perhaps not to be difficult, but to try to provide education and an opportunity of where they could go.
You could also word an ordinance. So I kind of like the idea of going towards an ordinance where you can actually enforce it if you want to. It doesn't mean you have to all the time, just like the speed limit or anything else. But at least it gives you something that if it becomes a problem that you actually can have a little bit more of a leg to stand on to enforce it. But can you also then write into when you do the contracts for facilities, can you put exceptions? So for example, at the softball tournament, this can be going all weekend and it's mainly adults. Maybe, put some exceptions in during those activities that maybe could go outside of the normal bounds of like what the park would be on any other basis.
Okay.
I'm just curious about this building. We have plays here, and we have intermissions. Do people step outside, smoke? I'll be honest with you, I'm not aware, so they do.
They do at most of our facilities.
Yeah. Well,
even in the middle of
so that's another issue.
You would
I think it's hard to across the board say no smoking. I think you open yourself up to some liability issues. But I think it's fair to say, yeah, designated areas for functions that involve the entire community, youth to adults, but certainly in youth events, whether you're at the Pete Livermore Complex or wherever you happen to be, I think that's when you can be a bit more strict and say no smoking and have an ordinance in place to do so. But you still have to have a place for people to go who that's something they want.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Glenn?
Yeah, if UNR has gone to a no smoking policy, I'm curious what they do. I mean, there's got to be plenty of events at UNR, and events with alcohol and possibly weddings. I mean, what do they do if, in order to have that ordinance of a no smoking campus and at the same time accommodate events that tend to have smoking accompanied with it?
I just know that I've been up there. They have a tobacco-free campus. They have signs everywhere that say that now. They do have their own police force, obviously. I don't know how they go about actually enforcing that, like at Mackey Stadium. But They do have signage everywhere, and it's probably part of the education. You know, when you sign up, that's in all your orientation and just part of that culture now. And it sounds like WNC is sort of moving in that direction.
I believe that was the biggest problem with the fair. It was sort of last minute that they decided, so it wasn't written into the contract when the vendors. So it was more of really social, if they would please not smoke and use the smoking areas. No one signed in, it wasn't put in their contract to begin with. And I believe with the schools, it's so far has been mostly social enforcement. And you'd be surprised how well people receive it from, like you were talking about at the field. You know, hey, my kid's, breathing here. Will you please go to the parking lot? And people usually are pretty good to listen. And we were thinking more if it's completely up to you what you want to do. If you have repeat offenders, then maybe you're going to want to cite them, or you can decide to have them not be able to use the park for a week, or it's up to you to put what you want in place. So.
All right, do we have any public comments?
Bad for the fish.
Yeah. Sir, for the record, identify yourself.
At your pleasure, Madam Chair. C.K. Bailey, Carson City. I want to thank Parks and Rec for putting in ashtrays at Bailey Pond. They're kind of a funny looking tall vase, if you will. Doesn't have any flowers in it. It has butts. But it is very successful in keeping the litter down at Bailey Pond. I'm not sure which is worse. Well, thankfully, at Fuji or at Bailey's, there's a wind that generally comes from the west to the east, so that we're not just thinking about tobacco, but brakes from Highway 395 and brake linings and powders and things like that. I think those ashtrays have helped tremendously. It's kind of an iconic item where if there's an ashtray there, it's not exactly giving permission to smoke there, but it's saying this is where you should do it, and not just indiscriminately throw the butts everywhere. And it is outdoors, and it's a smoking sport sometimes, be it cigar, be it cigarettes, be it pipe. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CK. All right, if there's nothing further, thank you so much, Faith. That was very informative, and thank you for sharing. In the future, would we be inviting either Faith or Sandy back to give us an update on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Leanne, Commissioner Keever and I will continue to attend those meetings. Sandy's been attending as well. We'll continue to report back to you, let you know where we're at. City of Sparks actually has a community survey about this out now. They're a little bit ahead of kind of where we're at. They're really, I think, on a mission to implement something, which might be nice because we can kind of see how that goes too and learn from that. So we're meeting, I think it's every other month. With that group. This month was canceled, but we'll continue to report back to this group, and then I'll provide all your comments and your feedback that you had today to that group and let them know kind of how you guys are feeling about everything. So, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Thank you. Let's move on to our next agenda item. Review, discussion, and possible recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding approval of an ordinance for the Second Amendment to the Development Agreement for Schultz Ranch between Carson City, Linear Reno, LLC, and Ryder DUDA Carson, LLC, to change the requirement to complete the Central Neighborhood Park located in Phase 3 to before the issuance of the 250th building permit. Jennifer, would you walk us through this, please?
Thank you. We actually have a representative from Community Development and a representative from the developer here to talk about their request, and and then I can answer any questions if you have any concerns about from the park side and timing. I'd be happy to answer that, and Dave's here as well if you have any maintenance questions about timing of park construction.
All right, so would you guys come on down and visit with us for a while?
And you do have a lot of information in your packet, probably more than enough. If you look at that, they provided us with a lot of really informational information. If you just look at that first sheet, it really gives you an overview of the situation.
Welcome. Would you guys introduce yourselves for the record?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. Susan Pansky, Special Projects Planner with the Planning Division. For the record, I apologize. I've been talking for 2 days straight and I've lost my voice, so I'm going to keep it brief. I'm just going to give a little bit of background and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim Scheidemann from Lennar Homes to talk about their specific request. So for those of you that aren't aware, I'm sure you all are, Schultz Ranch was approved in 2006 at over 500 units. It sat vacant for many years, almost 10 years, until development started up again. It had a development agreement on it. That development agreement had a condition that they had to put a phasing plan in place before they could move forward. They had that phasing plan and the development agreement modification approved in 2014. In that phasing plan, because they had lost units through a redesign and also one of the property owners decided to leave the development, they dropped down from over 500 units to 424. And so at that time, we had put in a modification for the park to be completed at the 210th lot completion versus the 250th, which is what the original condition of approval said, and that was based on the reduced number of lots. Today, Lennar has requested the modification of the development agreement to go back to the 250 lots, and that's based on their construction schedule and their process through with the Parks and Recreation Department, going through the design review and approval of the park, because it is in the landscape maintenance district that the park is responsible ultimately for maintaining with the tax dollars that come out of that subdivision. The formal process is they apply to the Planning Division to modify the development agreement. Because it's a Parks and Recreation element, it's come to you for recommendation for approval, and then the next step excuse me, will be for it to go to the Board of Supervisors for approval of that amendment. So I'm happy to answer questions if you have them. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Tim from Lennar. Thank you.
All right. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Curtis?
Does this include scanning through the background information? And from memory, there's some detention pond, possible park areas, there's landscaping, there's trails, I think. Does this include all of that too, or is it just the park?
This is just the Central Park. There is a specific condition related to the completion of that are tied to the building permit. So everything else is on a specific phasing schedule that is in the current development agreement. It's not being requested to be changed at this time.
Susan? If we were to approve this amendment and we waited till the 250th building permit was issued, what kind of delay would that cause in building the park?
So from what I'm told and what their application to the Planning Division stated is basically it would be, they would be completed in September of 2018. Because they're anticipating starting construction in the spring of 2018 upon completion of the review and approval of that design by the Parks Department.
Commissioner Glenn?
What would it be if it wasn't approved? Completion, if it's approved, it would be completed in September of 2018. If it's not approved, when would it be completed?
If it's not approved, it'll still be completed in September of 2018, but construction of their homes will halt until it's completed.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Bagwell?
Just so I can understand that, so you're saying it would be impossible to do it? Is it because of weather? I mean, I'm trying to understand why can't you comply with the 210? I think we need a little more on the record as to why would it stop you from doing the park now what in the schedule would make you have to stop selling homes versus building the park, I guess is what I really need a little more on the record is to tell me why.
Yeah, good evening. Tim Scheidemann with Lennar Homes. To answer the question, we are planning to, we're in the design stage of getting the park approved, which hoping to have approved the next couple of months is what our goal is, but that puts us into the winter, which doesn't allow, depending on what winter does, of course, allow for, constructability. Our intent is to start the park, like Susan said, in April-ish. It's a large park, I think 3.8 acres, I believe. It's a nice sized park with quite a few amenities, which is probably a 6-month build out. We just don't want to be stuck. We don't want to be in the middle of building the park. We hit the 210th building permit, and now we can't continue to build, where this property has, or community has been very good for us. I mean, it was kind of no pun intended, but a crapshoot, because nothing has been built in Sparks for 10 years prior to us starting down there, and it's been very well received by the community, and we just don't want to be put in that position that, okay, shut down construction, where we have a huge construction team down there, salespeople down there, customer care operations going on down there. That's the only reason.
So part of the dilemma for me, and it's not that I necessarily have an issue, but so is it because you sold faster and didn't start the design work soon enough on the park? Because what I'm getting at is it's not like you didn't know this was coming up, so why wasn't the design work already taken to the, 7 months ago, so that you could have been building it could have already been building it?
Good point. It just went faster than anticipated, and straight up honesty.
Because it's important for me that before we go and recommend changing contract terms with developers and things like that, that we have good cause and that it's mutually beneficial to both parties, not just one party, right? So I'm looking, and I would assume from the city perspective, so do you have the plans for the park at the city? So they're at least being reviewed right now.
They are at, and Jan, correct me if I'm wrong, 90%?
I just need some assurance of where we're at before we go and give you a longer time, that they have submitted or they're at 90% design.
Yeah, and Supervisor Bagwell, they've been wonderful to work with. We are at 90% design. They've heard, all of our requests to make sure we meet standards. You already approved the conceptual design a few years back, so we're seeing that design through and making sure that, it's going to be something that's easy to maintain, that's going to last, that's going to be sustainable and meets all of our standards. They've been great to work with. They've been meeting all of the timelines and deadlines. I mean, we couldn't ask, honestly, for a better cooperator to work with.
So let me ask, is the problem when we have 210 homes that the park has to be completed before you can move on to number 211?
That's correct.
It's how we hold the feet to the fire, and that's really, again, my whole point is I want the developers to follow through on their contract terms and not continually come in and get amendments, and you push out the amenity that was the benefit to doing a PUD, right? Because part of planned unit developments is you get something, but so does the community maybe, and we're putting conditions of approval and all those other things. So, but I think your explanation is solid, and that we're at 90% design, so I don't see that you won't deliver the park. Okay.
Right, and it sounds like the park will be finished in 2018 no matter what.
And Madam Chair, from the timing perspective, I think from a constructability standpoint, the timing actually works really well, and it lends itself to healthy plant material, healthy trees, really good construction. We won't be in the middle of winter trying to do work and then have weather delays and create additional problems to infrastructure, maybe due to flooding or snow or things that can come up during winter construction that are just unforeseeable. So I think we'll get a better quality product in the end by doing the timeline that they're proposing.
Commissioner Cassiopo?
I was going to go there. I think, the benefit of getting these things completed before or soon after winter does a lot of good than trying to rush it through a winter process. And I think that's important. I guess my question is, based on the sales you've been seeing, and I know it's speculation, but timing from 210 to say 250 permits, what do we, what are you projecting? How much longer is it going to take you to get to 250? Not to put you on the spot.
I'd love to say 250 by July. I think we'll hit 250 by the end of next year.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a little confused because Jennifer and a couple other people have mentioned changing the timeline. You just said that the timeline's not changing no matter what. The question is whether or not you're going to halt construction on your homes at 210 until you complete the park, or if you're going to keep building your homes up to 250 and complete the park. Am I correct? You're not changing the timeline no matter what, regardless of what the Board of Supervisors does.
What we're concerned with is being some point in the process of building the park, we hit 210, and we still have 2 or 3 months left to complete the park, and not be able to continue with pulling building permits to continue building homes.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that people have talked about an alternative schedule. There is no alternative schedule. You're going to complete the park in September of 2018, whether this remains at 210 or it gets changed to 250, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so there's no alternative schedule. There's no safety issues or better park issues. It is solely based on do the supervisors, and do we want to recommend to the supervisors to change that number from 210 to 215? I just want to take out any extraneous issues. 50. Thank you.
I think there's sort of a happy medium between the two rather than an alternative schedule. If they aren't able to build and then they speed up construction, to me, that's where errors are made, and you're trying to do that to try to meet your homes, and you've got a lot going on, so you try to actually increase your construction schedule on the park. I think there's opportunities for confusion, and I don't want to see that happen either. I want everybody to be successful in the end. They've met all their commitments thus far. They've met all of our deadlines, at least as far as design and all those milestones. So I don't have any indication that they wouldn't fulfill, what they're doing. So I don't know if there's some sort of condition that would give you some peace of mind with that. I don't know how we could meet in the middle, perhaps.
I think for me, the fact that you're telling me that the design is at 90% means that they're meeting their obligation, and that's I think what all of us up here were trying to determine. We just didn't want to give them 40 more building permits, and they're not going to, then they're going to, let's say it different, they're going to come back and can I go to 290, come back again, can I go to 300? So long as the 90% design, and you just put that on the record, you have that. So I'm confident that just what Commissioner Glenn said, we're going to get the park
no matter what
in September, and I think that's what we're all after here is to, and I agree with you, we want the best park, not a hurried park, so that they can sell 40 more homes. So
I guess the bottom line is, it's always going to be a hurried park in the sense of they want to build homes, they want to sell homes. Right. It's going to be moving along as quick as they can keep it moving. So I don't know really that I see a quality difference, because they're going to push it to get it done regardless. There's really what we're saying is there's going to be 40 more homes built without a park that exists, right?
Could.
Like at max?
At max.
Worst case?
Worst case, yes.
Is there any drawbacks for those 40 homes being built from a design perspective of this park probably acting as water retention, water control, or anything like that? Is there anything that could be like degrade essentially the quality of those other 40 homes?
No, there is a retention feature built into the park. Yes.
And so if that isn't done and the other 40 homes are done, is that a concern?
No, because the pond is actually already has been dug.
Okay. So, and it's really not up to me to judge that anyway, but just more of a question to say, like, if that, so really then if 90%, if everybody's, it seems like you guys are on board with just getting the park done. You probably want to get it done as quick as possible so you can get the build out of your community, so.
And just to add to that, we want to build the park because it is an enhancement to the neighborhood.
And helps you sell it.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Commissioner Glenn?
Yeah, were the home purchasers promised a point at which the park would be built? Were the people who purchased homes, were they promised that a park would be built at 210?
That is a good question. And unfortunately, I can't answer that because I'm not on the sales side of the development. So I don't know.
I think so. You bought a home.
You tell me I'm buying a home.
And I'm the developer, and I'm going to give you a park at 210.
No, I'm going to get a park at the end of September.
He's asking the right question. I don't know which way they sold.
Around counting. Okay.
Right. I don't know which way.
I bring it up for a point. I mean, I know from what they're telling us that the park's going to get done at the September of 2018, no matter what. There's no doubt there. But if we're going to allow community builders to make promises, and we are agreeing with those promises, and then we change the terms later, we are essentially lying to those purchasers as well. And we're allowing, I mean, it's like my kid is given a homework assignment or has a responsibility, he doesn't get it done and doesn't have a very good reason, because truthfully the reason they're saying is basically we got really busy, we didn't get it done in time. They've known they've had to get this park done and plans submitted. They could have had it done by 2017. They could have had it done early. And you're basically giving me a bad excuse. I just didn't get it done on time. And it's one thing to let a kid turn in a homework assignment late and try and teach them a lesson. It's another thing when we're dealing with adults who are making huge profits. And so I bring these points up because if a promise was made to these purchasers, we've essentially made that promise as well. And even though the park's coming at the same time either way, and I hate to interfere with construction, I have a hard time breaking a promise to those purchasers, especially when there's not a good reason here. At least I haven't heard a clear good reason. So maybe there is one. I missed it.
I would just like to say from a general development standpoint, not advocating one way or the other for this particular request, development conditions change all the time. And we as the city, in my opinion, should not be responsible for what the developers and their sales teams are telling their purchasers, because this is not an unusual situation where we have a hard winter and there are situations beyond our control that we just have not been able to meet those timelines. So it's the same kind of situation where you get into enforcing CC&Rs on behalf of a community as the city. We don't do that. That's a private transaction. It's a private agreement between the people that sign those agreements. The city doesn't get involved in that kind of situation. So generally, while I appreciate what you're saying, that you feel that you would potentially be letting those buyers down by approving this, development conditions always change. And sometimes they're in our control and sometimes they aren't. This is not something that is an unusual request. From planning side, we see this type of situation happen all the time. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
So I tend to kind of agree with what Susan was just talking about. I'm trying to find the unforeseen or uncontrollable issue that makes this not, that you couldn't comply. Because I agree that conditions happen, right? You have 14 days of a storm, so you couldn't build. And I agree with you. So then you give them a 14 days extra on the contract to complete it because of weather days or things like that. So I'm with Commissioner Glenn is, I'm looking for you to tell me what the unforeseen condition or issue was that would say we should grant that, so that I'm with him, right? I just want to make sure there isn't 190 homes that have been sold and there's people sitting there thinking they're getting a park. And if you guys sold it as a September park, then I'm very happy. If you sold it as a 210 home park, I'm not as happy.
What I can, yeah, right, thank you. What I can say is, as soon as I realized how fast sales were going, I immediately kicked off the architect engineer to start the design of the park. As far as what has been committed to the people that have purchased the homes, I don't know. I'm sure there's contingencies in the purchase and sale agreements that allow for flexibility in amenities to the community. I would be shocked if there wasn't.
To piggyback on both of them, they're both correct. If we're talking about act of God occurrences, if you will, and there's clauses like that in most of these agreements, a 14-day storm doesn't necessarily translate to a 14-day extension because there's extenuating circumstances. A 14-day storm, which we're seeing around here, raises groundwater that sticks around the entire season. You know, last year we didn't have an issue. I mean, things have been dry for a long time. You can argue both sides of that, but it's not a one-for-one type comparison. So I think I would be shocked too if there wasn't language in the contracts that gave some flexibility in there. I do agree with the points though that we want to be careful and make sure we understand what that contract is before we decide one way or another.
Commissioner Glenn?
Yeah, I just want to be careful not to confuse the issue here. They're not actually building the park right now. There's no weather condition that prevented them from developing plans to build the park. They realized sales were going fast. Once they realized sales were going fast, they did their best to submit a park plans to the city as quickly as possible. I get that, but again, that's failing to get their work done on time. And it's because their sales team was doing such a good job. It's possible their sales team was using the park as a carrot. Probably not, but it's possible they were. I just, again, and the park's getting done at the same time either way. I just don't want to confuse issues here. There's not an alternative schedule, and there's not an act of God that got in the way here. Otherwise, we would have been told that. I don't want to jump the gun and jump to conclusions to anything else.
Well, I can tell you, we went out and we did tour and talked to the salespeople, and we were told there would be a park built very soon. So I guess you could take that any way you wanted.
Right.
Tim, what number are you guys at now? Do you know, approximately, to maybe give some context?
My guess, under construction, 130 homes. 130 permits, probably. And we're typically pulling between 6 and 10 permits a month.
How about if we just talking this through I'm just throwing out an idea, because I am with Commissioner Glenn that I want to respect the people that already bought the homes. So I'm comfortable with saying potentially a recommendation that we allow you to go to the 250 homes as long as we can see a sales agreement that does not promise them a park at 210 homes. So if you are right and your sales agreement just says you're going to get the amenity, but it's not at home 210, so long as you're what you had the first 130 people that are already under construction have not been promised, then I'd be more comfortable, because I'm with Commissioner Glenn that I don't want to have those residents. Do you see where I'm going? It's just an idea, you guys, is right? Then we all feel a little more comfortable that we're not doing something to let you just build more homes and not honor the 130 people that are already under construction. So maybe we're comfortable saying yes as long as the sales agreement supports what you said.
I have no problem producing the sales agreement.
I think that's a fair and equitable way to approach
Protect
this.
both sides
Yes.
of the issue.
How does everybody else feel?
Okay.
I tend to side. I think that Commissioner Glenn brings up a really good point. And one thing that I think that, in a sense, that the people that have purchased those homes have been told that, because it is in the agreement on Exhibit L, page 4. It states part of their plan. So if anybody was buying a house and they were curious about when they would get their park, they would know what the plan was. Mm-hmm. Now, whether they care or not, I don't know, and whether the sales group, we don't know how far the sales group went, but ultimately, I think really they were promised a park at the 250 mark. Or, I'm sorry, 210 mark. Mm-hmm. So if you could produce a sales agreement, I think that's a good solution. The other would be, is you mentioned you're 90% of the way there. When do you expect to be at 100?
Parks Department has to.
Yeah, are you waiting on parks? Is it?
No, I think we've resolved all the final issues. There were only a small handful of items, so it should be any time now.
Yes, we did have a meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe, to go over red lines, and the architect, landscape architect, is in the process of making those changes to resubmit. I'm going to guess in 2 weeks.
They have a really good design team, and they've been really responsive. I mean, we couldn't be more happy on the design side of what's the progress that's been made.
Commissioner Curtis?
Well, the only other suggestion I have is that maybe we suspend this for a few minutes, go on to the next item, and if you could call somebody, if there's anybody available that, what is available, what does it say in the sales agreement, we would know for sure. Just a suggestion.
Well, we could make a motion that's contingent upon.
Yeah. All right.
Just put the requirement in the motion on our recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, who doesn't have to just, I get upset if they don't accept my recommendations, but they don't have to, right? So at the board level,
you'd be there
we would see the sales agreement, right? So our recommendation from this level would just say, we think that it's okay as long as the sales agreement had a condition that told the homeowners that the amenity could be delayed, whatever, whatever clause. And if the clause was in there, then we're okay. If the clause isn't, and then it's up to the Board of Supervisors at that point in time.
That's different from what you requested, because I'm sure they have all sorts of qualifications in their agreements that anything can be delayed. What you suggested, there was no mention of a park being built at 210. So, I'm not, if there's a clause there that it can be delayed, I still have a problem with it, and I wouldn't support it. But if there's nothing in the contract, even if they're selling it, that in their sales process saying 210, there's nothing in the contract that says a park at 210, I'm perfectly fine supporting the resolution. But if there's just clauses that they can rearrange things if they have a reason to do it, I'm sure those clauses exist. Those clauses exist in almost every contract.
Anybody else? Jennifer? Okay. Any public comments? All right. So what's the pleasure of the commission? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm trying.
There is on the first page. It's not really a technical staff report because we're not bringing it to you. It's, from them. So there's a suggested action, and then if you wanted to throw, your conditional component toward the end, that might be easiest.
Okay, so I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of an ordinance for the Second Amendment to the development agreement for Schultz Ranch between Carson City, Lennar, Reno LLC, and Ryder-Duda Carson LLC to change the requirement to complete the Central Neighborhood Park located in Phase 3 to before the issuance of the 250th building permit, as long as the sales agreements do not state a park will be built on the 210th building agreement.
Second.
I'm just repeating the suggested action, and I'm adding on as long as the sales agreement has no mention of a park at a 210th building permit.
And Commissioner Bagwell seconded the motion.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
And we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you both so much.
I abstained.
Oh, you abstained?
I came in halfway.
Okay.
Missed the first half.
Oh, sure. I did call for
Thank
public
you.
comment, but I
She did.
called it in.
Yeah, you did before.
No, I appreciate you guys' consideration. Thank you.
Susan, Tim, thank you so much for coming and sharing your evening with us.
Don't come back.
We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Sorry.
Whoops.
Yep, we're breaking.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Break dance.
All right, so we'll be back at 7:25. we're going to move to agenda item 3D, possible action, review, discussion, and possible direction to staff regarding special event support and equipment provided by the Parks Department. And we're going to hear from David again. David?
Madam Chairman, thank you. For the record, Dave Navarro, Parks Operations Superintendent. The Parks Department provides special event support for city-sponsored, nonprofit, and commercial events throughout Carson City. As was discussed earlier, a lot of our stuff that we do is maintenance of the parks, but another big component that we have and that we do in the parks is special events. Setup. And we have realized over the years that this has become a bigger and bigger component to what we actually do and what we provide to the citizens, to organizations, and also to visitors who come into our town. I've also attached with this a couple of exhibits to go along with the staff report. I'd have to thank our reservation coordinator, April Livesay. She did a tremendous job of helping me out gather some of the data and be able to provide that to you with the staff report. So I kind of like to talk about some of the data in here. It's a lot to look at. And it's a lot to take in, and it took me a while actually. But the main thing where we're at a threshold now that by doing these special events set up and using the equipment that we have, some of the equipment that we are providing is from we have a stage that's from 1985 that's been in the Parks Department since then. We have bleachers, large mobile bleachers that were purchased in 1996. A lot of those things that any repairs or any things that have to be fixed, they don't no longer make those parts, and we're retrofitting those in-house, and are able to get those pieces of equipment out still, and so they can be used. So a lot of the equipment that we have is aging, and as I have in some of these packets, if you look at Exhibit A, like for instance, and I want to explain something. It says at the top of the thing, it says park reservation event activity units, and what a unit is. So if an event, this comes in, if you look at the very bottom where it says the CCNV fair, a unit is the fair will come in and they will want to be at the Fuji exhibit hall. They will use that. They'll use the fairground, like arena, and each one of those is a unit. Okay, so one of the things on the equipment is you'll see they wanted wire looms. That's a unit. They want the stage redevelopment stage. That's a unit. What it doesn't show in here, like when they ask for a wire loom, which is a power box that they will provide to vendors. It could be one, or it could be 26 the power boxes that we have to give to them. And when we do that, we have to run out cords out to all these different areas as well. So that that is not in there. We just know that they're going to use power, and when we meet with these groups, they're going to say, okay, we need 20 power boxes, or we need one. So, and same with tables and chairs as well. Mentioned earlier that stuff that we provide to these special events. What kind of impact is this having on us? And I think the biggest impact it has right now is on our core services that you saw in the slides earlier that we had, with just mowing, aerification, fertilizing. Not only do we have to work around all of the programs and activities that are provided to our youth and to the citizens here, but there's other things that we have to work around so we can provide these services to these special events. We have the data from, you see here, 2012, 2013. and the reason why we have it only going back to there is because 2012 and 13, that's when our reservation coordinator, April, started, and that's when we also switched over to a new program for reservations. Prior to that, there's no data to be found. Once it was switched over, that completely got that data was lost. So this is from just 2012 and 2013. And add a quick glance, if you look at the highlighted areas, the facilities, and the equipment, you'll see in 2012, 2013, what the totals were there. And then you can see we have 2015-16 highlighted because that was kind of like our big year. And we consider that our big, heavy year because that's when we got in those what we like to call it the mega events, Epic Ride, Rockabilly Riot, events that required not only park staff and equipment, but also other cities and departments as well, Public Works, let's see, Sheriff, and see also Fire as well. So when those big events got introduced, and since then, we've had those events on a regular basis, let's see, every year. And we moved on, and so one of the other exhibits I have, Exhibit B here, was just to give you an idea. Everything that's in Exhibit A is reservations that go through April, but are not an indication of what is going on at our sports complexes. This is only for stuff at the let's see, Community Center, Fuji Park, Mills Park, areas like that, but does not indicate what's going on in the sports field. If you look at Exhibit B, that gives you an idea when we're not doing a special event that is at those other facilities, then we are providing support and services to these to the Carson City Visitors Bureau's sponsored events. And it's becoming more and more difficult for us. And we talked about a staffing issue, and the staffing issues that we had this year, and with our events that have continued to decrease and our staffing levels are going down, and it's for several reasons why our staffing level has gone down. This year, the unemployment rate is low. It's at 4%, which is great for the community and for here, but we're not getting that seasonal workforce because of that. We are currently at 7 seasonal employees now, and we constantly are going to our staffing agency, asking them, if you get somebody in who's interested, send them our way. So it's not like we have a lack of funds right now. We just have a lack of people to hire, and that's the first time we've actually had that problem. Prior to this, we would have the luxury of people coming in, and we'd hire them, and we were able to staff them. And it was reversed. We would have issues with the funding, but now this year, for some reason, it's been hard getting people to come work for us. And yes, it's because of the unemployment rate's low, but I think also there's other companies out there who are offering more competitive stuff. You can go work at a fast food place and make $15 an hour and get partial benefits. Our seasonal employees, we start them out at around $12 an hour, and we just recently raised that right now. But we're finding out that when we advertise now for a seasonal employment, it's just not there. We're still having some good luck whenever we have a full-time opening. We've had a couple recently, and we've seen pools, 60 applicants in those, and I think because everyone's looking for full-time security and see also benefits as well to go along with that. So I think there's no issues with that. It's just more with our seasonal staff as well. And so what this leads to is, again, I should have probably had this in the presentation of our maintenance levels, but also in the exhibits like C, you can see what the maintenance levels were when they were established in 2006 and how we base all of our maintenance off of that. And the special events and the setups that we have do have an impact on these in one way or another. Like I said, we try to maintain a level 1, and some things that we do are, and other things are maybe level like 3, or maybe we don't have any level 4 or 5 on here, but maybe there's some things that we only can get to once a year now, as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So it's been a challenge, and we've been dealing with this, and we're kind of at a point like, how do we go about now moving forward from here? Do we look at possibly cutting back some of those services? And I think it was brought up like before, do we look at not providing everything that we do and that we have in the past? One, because of our aging equipment, and 2, just because the lack of employees that we have and time. When we do some of these events, we are 6 to 7 day events. We will go in at the beginning, we'll provide all the equipment, we'll set it up, and then we provide people to work during the events, maintain restrooms, emptying trash cans, picking up litter, and then at the end of the event, we break everything down. We got to pull everything off, and we got to clean everything up. And then what people don't realize after that, in some of the parks, when you have like the water off for a certain amount of time during the month of July and August, we got to spend now time to rehab those and get those back up, which also cuts into some of our like core maintenance, and we have to pull resources and pull employees to now rehab an area, get it set, and then move on to the next event that's coming into town. And sometimes it's only like a 1 or 2 day turnaround, and and it makes it tough. And we have really creative scheduling, but it gets to a point where when you have employees that are working, back-to-back days, weeks, or working long hours, then it starts to affect the morale, and it starts to affect the operation of some of the equipment. And so it's just we're just at that point now. We're looking for more guidance, and that's why we want to bring it forward from here. So
just a couple of questions. I'm sure that you want. First of all, could you explain how the funding works for these special events? In other words, is it intended to cover your costs? And is there any capital improvements in that so you could buy new equipment? Or is that something that you would want to take a look at to see? And then if you do cover the costs, what you're saying is that right now anyway, you have the funding to bring on the extra staff. You just can't find them. Do they have to be seasonal? Could you get some permanent staff? Because it sounds like you're behind on some of the other things as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Curtis. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I'll try to take a stab at that. I might not have all the answers to your question. The fee schedule that we currently have was adopted in 2006. Additional fees were brought forward, I think, in 2009, and I'm not sure why. I wasn't here, obviously, but didn't go forward. So our fees are very outdated. We've talked about that before. It's something we're hoping to bring to you in December. We have staff actively working on it. We're doing a regional analysis. We've looked at 21 other agencies to try to get fees, see where we measure up, and to address the cost covering situation. Are we covering costs? No, we're not. We're not covering costs. The money that comes in as revenue goes into the general fund, and obviously the general fund subsidizes our entire department. And you can see in that NRPA matrix that we'll be talking about later under the director's report, kind of where we measure up with that. So, that's okay. Sorry.
No pressure there.
We have a lot of, I know. I didn't even know what I was talking about. I know. Right, yeah. So we will be bringing fees back to you to sort of address that situation. In our strategic plan, we talked about trying to take the burden a little bit less off the general fund. I think that's our obligation. We should be doing everything we can to kind of diversify our portfolio and not just rely on the general fund. And part of that structure is fees. As far as the capital equipment, you know, we had the bleachers, we had all of that stuff listed on the CIP list, and what this group basically said is, let's hold off. We need to have a discussion, and that's where Supervisor Bagwell said, you know, I want you to bring it back and let's talk about special events, because is that really our greatest need in our department when our infrastructure is literally crumbling around us? Is a mobile bleacher, is a stage, when there's other vendors and other providers in the region to provide those services? Should we be in the special event business? Should we only provide services for city events? You know, what do we want to provide? If you look at that level of service standard, you'll notice that special events isn't even on there, and that was in 2006. So somewhere between then and now, we really got in the special events business to provide a service to the community and support those events, but at what cost? So you know, it does really impact us. The scheduling is really hard. I think we've been too accommodating, especially like at Mills Park. We go a long time without getting water at that park for these special events. And we're to the point where Mills is probably maxed out. If someone new comes forward during the summer and wanting a special event, we're going to have to say no. I mean, it's not just about staff, it's about impact to our facilities. For the Visitors Bureau sponsored events, we do have an agreement that will be coming forward, I believe, either at the end of October or in November to the Board of Supervisors, and they pay for the direct costs for. So if a staff is not scheduled at a facility and we have to bring someone in to support that event, they pay for the seasonal staff. They'll pay for the overtime that's incurred. They'll pay for if we have to bring in portable restrooms or things like that to support the event. They're covering the direct cost for that event. They're not paying for anything, though, about the impact to those facilities. I would love, and I know I've talked to Supervisor Bagwell about this before, is to eventually have a set-aside fund for infrastructure. So we have some of our fees or a portion of our revenues that come in set aside for infrastructure to support our facilities. So the impacts from the sporting events to go back to, like, say, Centennial Park, and a portion of that, whether it's a percentage or whatever, toward the infrastructure. And a lot of agencies are sort of leaning in that direction so we can take care of ourselves and the impacts to our facilities. I can tell you I'm not a fan of the special event support that we provide. I think it's a really great service, but I do think that there's other people that are available to provide it, at least for the general public type rental events. There's a lot of companies that provide stages and they meet safety standards and have inspections, and there is a liability with us providing some of these services. And when our equipment is aging and we're at that stage, sort of like the ice rink, this is a similar conversation. As David said, you know, our equipment is really old and it's almost unusable. And part of it is because in the manner that we've used them. So a lot of the bleachers were designed to just be at a sports facility and stay there. We're hauling them all over town. We're putting them on a truck, hauling them off a truck. I mean, we're using them in a manner that really it wasn't designed to do. And at some point, it's going to become unsafe. We're not there yet, but I fear that that's going to be happening soon. So it's a good time to talk about, you know, if the equipment goes out of service, is that what we're going to try to find funding for, or do we continue to replace our playgrounds and replace, you know, our other infrastructure that's crumbling? So that's kind of where this discussion probably needs to go, is a policy decision and some direction from you on where we need to go.
Commissioner Glenn?
Yeah, and please interject and interrupt me if I'm wrong in my assessment. It sounds like we're comparing two completely opposite options right now. One is we need to start getting out of it, or at least stop getting out of that providing that equipment and providing these services completely, or we need to, if we are going to get into it, we need to pony up with budget dollars and pony up with extra staffing. And that's what I'm hearing?
Yes, or you could do a hybrid of the two. So my concern about completely getting out of the special events business is what it does to other city departments. So I worry about the fire department and the badge pinning ceremony. Do they have the budget to go rent a stage? Probably not. You know, things like that. I don't want to hurt ourselves at the same time. So maybe there's a smaller portion that we could provide. I think city first, renters, paying renters, you know, second to me as a priority. Not that I don't want to provide that to the community, but there are other options to provide that service. So maybe there's a hybrid approach as well.
Yeah, I guess the question I have is, has anyone, or have we thought of doing maybe a study on the impact if we start cutting back? Like, you know, again, what would help me is to understand exactly if we implemented a certain policy, this is the impact that would happen to the events that occur or to the community. I mean, when we say renters, are we talking about people in the community renting? Or are we talking about Visitors Bureau? Or are we talking about something else?
If you look in your exhibits, that information is there for you. So if you go to exhibit, I would say E, would give you, yeah, this is the packet, yeah. So this shows you who's using our facilities and what they're using. If you look at the first page of Exhibit B on the left-hand side, you'll see which ones are Visitors Bureau events. So if our equipment went away and we didn't have a stage or bleachers, we could still provide the services to those Visitors Bureau events, but we would rent out that equipment and the Visitors Bureau would pay for those things, those direct costs. So I don't see that really negatively impacting them. They primarily use like restrooms and the tables and chairs and that sort of thing. Then we have those city events in the next section, then city sponsored. So those are more partnership and co-sponsored type events that happen in the community. Then there's ones that go downtown, and then the last page is those facility renters that are actually paying for the facility. Those include nonprofits, those include for-profit, but they're actually paying to use the facility. So these would be the events and the users that would be impacted, you know, by the decisions that we're contemplating. And if you have questions on a specific event or a specific user, you know, we can try to help clarify that for you too.
Any comments or questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Curtis, you're usually good for one.
You'll like this one.
I'm sorry, Jan.
Okay. I was successful when I was chair of this commission in getting the number of dog agility items reduced. It looks like they've gone back up. This may not be pertinent to this discussion. I just want to observe that 13 weekends a month taking up an entire park is, you know, because they don't want any other people with dogs in the park, even if they're on a leash. So I just want to comment. I'm sure we're going to visit this when we get under my agenda item. I can't remember when you have it down on reservations and things. But it's just, to me, that's excessive. So it's just a comment. It has nothing to do with anything else.
Commissioner Bagwell.
So I just want to clarify and ensure that what you're indicating is everything from line 40 on, if I'm understanding the exhibit correctly, would be your community rentals or people that are looking, that are not city or Visitors Bureau paid for. But everything that they're asking for that has X's on this list that they utilize, you're saying is available from another resource besides the city. So we're not cutting out the opportunity for the event to occur. It's just they would not be utilizing city staff to do it. They would, I don't know, like call Top Hat or whoever it is and get the rentals. So there is no product that the Parks Department is supplying that they can't get elsewhere. So we're not going to harm the event itself, but potentially the cost component because the city subsidizes, and that's really part of the discussion here, right? So could they go get it in the commercial world and purchase it, and do they have to pay a higher price? And so maybe the events couldn't happen depending on because of the pricing. I think we have the job of looking at all of it, right?
Yeah. I don't have, we haven't done a cost analysis to what other providers charge for those type of things. We do have some equipment replacement costs that we've looked at. As far as that piece, we can definitely look into that to see where we're at. The fees that we're looking at really that we'll bring back to you are September are more service-based rather than the equipment. So how much to get into the pool, how much do we charge for day camp, you know, most of that service-based stuff, we can definitely look into that too, and what we're providing, if should we, you know, choose to continue to provide those services. So I think it was, the fees were designed in mind to cover a portion of those costs. The problem is it goes into the general fund. It's not set aside for that infrastructure replacement component, like a depreciation. I think the fees were designed probably with that in mind, but we're not set up like that right now.
So I can tell you from the Board of Supervisors level, Supervisor Bonkowski and I brought the asset management to the forefront for that very reason, because I don't think it's particular to parks in the city, right? I think that our infrastructure issues are citywide, and that's part of the reason we're looking to get useful lives and things like that on all of our equipment and get the inventories so we can begin to, we created a fund for asset management, so I think we have an opportunity as the Parks and Rec, if we're going to be looking at fees or things to, and it's just throwing out an idea again, that we could say that 10%, you know, whatever, we come up with a new fee schedule for something, but that we said, and 10% of that's going to go to the asset management account on behalf of parks and open Parks Rec. So that it'd be line specific within that fund, but I think that's what we're trying now to tie the whole policy in, right? That we didn't at the board level create the fund, but we don't have anything to back up what we're doing. So I think we're looking across this system to work together to find out what do you all think is the right, should we take some money off of all the fees and put it into the asset account for many of the activities that we do, that we should have a sinking account to do replacement.
I agree. We should have a healthy account that factors in depreciation, equipment costs, and things like that we need. And I think as we look at these fees, as you alluded to, yeah, we can do our old internal fees and what it takes when we're looking at salaries and whatnot. But then we do have to look at the surrounding areas. Why, you know, one of the questions we always bring up here is, you know, what brings an event here versus Reno or somewhere else? And how important is it? You know, do we want to draw these people in here? I'm completely with you on, you know, minimizing our liability and things like stages and whatnot. If that stuff can be rented elsewhere and brought in here that keeps us out of that game, we're probably better for it. But the question is, if, you know, what are other communities doing if we do that and our costs go up times X? Again, how do we compare with Reno, Sparks, Lyon, Douglas, and all that? So I think before I can give you you know, some good thoughts on that, we do need to look at some more numbers. And, you know, and again, in the end, for me, it's what do we want to do, and can we be competitive doing it?
Thank you, Commissioner Cassioppo. I think there's sort of two things that you're really getting into that are great. It's not just what we're charging for the equipment. It's sort of the packages and the services that we're providing. Typical parks departments provide, like if you rent Mills Park, let's say, for an event, whatever it is, you get, you know, 50 tables that are on site already and 50 chairs that are on site already, whatever. I'm just throwing out random numbers. What we're doing is some of the practices that we're doing is what's killing us. So we're hauling tables and chairs from Fuji to accommodate this event. And then while we're doing that, it takes the labor, but it's wear and tear on that equipment. So I think it's sort of re-looking at how we're doing some of our rental packages, not just the fees, but what we're offering. So if you rent Mills Park, you get everything that's on site as part of your fee. If you need anything else, event organizer, you need to come and provide that. So just like a wedding, you're going to need a cake, you're going to need whatever, and it's up to that event organizer to provide those things. I think we've been just over accommodating and to try to provide those things. Oh, well, we have some bleachers, we can make that work for you. We're going to haul them from, Pete Livermore Sports Complex over to Mills Park, and then we're going to haul that. So some of those practice and the operational decisions, while we've been so accommodating to try to help, it is kind of perpetuated the problem that we're in now. So I would like to try to step back and look at how we provide some of those things and just the manner in which we're doing it. And you'll see in the new Visitors Bureau agreement, it sort of goes to that. If the equipment is on site, that's sort of part of that. Anything else, that's going to be an additional charge, and we'll have to rent that equipment, but that's part of that direct cost to try to reduce the impact on the equipment and on the staff.
Right. And we can have an internal discussion at that point, is what is the appropriate amount and type of equipment at each facility. And that's what we should be budgeting for, is to do what we want to do here and offer whatever level of service we want to offer. This is what we have, and in our research, it's reasonable. And if the costs pencil out, great, that's what we do. If not, we have to rethink it.
And that practice, I think, is more typical of what a Parks Department provides, because we're not Camelot Party Rentals. We're not AEG Live doing concerts. I mean, we're just not. We're not set up for that. We have some really amazing technical staff like Eric Klug, who does provide a lot of that support. But, I don't know. I'd rather have like the PA systems and we provide it to the fire department, the kind of on a smaller scale, if we're going to provide that service. Because I do want to make sure that we're not impacting other city departments in a negative way, because they don't have the budgets, just like we don't, to provide that service.
Commissioner Glenn, did you have something?
Yeah, I got a few things, but I'm trying to organize it. I like to think, I have several competing thoughts in my head on this. I like to think that, we're not the typical park service, and we're not the typical community, that sometimes, in many ways, we go above and beyond. And that's one of the things that I know myself and others are most proud of in living in Carson City. And so what I would like to see is some more analysis as to what's going to happen to some of these events if we do that. Specifically, Commissioner Bagwell pointed out anything on line 40 or below would basically would not get access to some of these services, and I get that, but there's a big difference between someone who wants to have stands in front of their hotel on Nevada Day Parade because they've had it every year and it benefits them, or someone having a nightly concert series that definitely benefits their business, and a difference for, say, Advocate to End Domestic Violence, which is a staple in this community. And their event, Taste of Downtown, is a huge staple, or the Father's Day powwow at the Stewart Colony, which they are cause-oriented events who have traditionally been here, and if we stop providing this service, a service that the community's been providing for a long time, how's that going to affect their event? How is their event going to even be able to go on if the costs go up to a point that it becomes prohibitive? So I guess I think this is great information to have. I would really like to see some sort of analysis on what's the impact going to be on some of these community events, and specifically the ones that have been going on for years that may not be able to survive, nonprofit events that may not be able to survive if we don't continue to provide those services.
We can definitely do that. We can do some additional research, bring that back. Another thing we're going to be faced at, too, is as this equipment deteriorates and we don't even have it to offer, they're still going to be impacted. So at some point, they're going to have impacts if our equipment fails without replacing it or without setting that aside to be able to continue to provide that piece of that service. So I just want to keep that in our minds, too, as we're getting into the winter and getting into building our budgets. Is that a priority?
And I would argue maybe it is a priority to replace that equipment. Especially if it means that certain community activities and events aren't going to happen, then maybe we and the Board of Supervisors do need to make it a priority to get that equipment, as maybe we and the Board of Supervisors do need to make it a priority to get our Parks and Rec staffing to an appropriate level in order to provide the services that are necessary for our community.
Yes, I agree very much with what was just said there, but another aspect possibly too is if you have a lot of outside vendors putting in bleachers or putting in electrical systems for concerts or whatever, is there some problem there if they don't do it the way we do it? In other words, they may be a little rougher on the grass. They may blow out a bunch of wiring because they didn't do it right. So is that an issue as well?
So you're saying if their standards might not meet our standards.
Right.
So I think any third party conducting work or an activity or anything in our park is always a potential concern. We do have permits for that. We collect deposits for that. So when there is damage or anything like that, we do have recourse. We do have their insurance. Also, we work with event organizers every day. So we try to minimize that on the operational end. David and his staff are really proactive on trying to work through those kinds of issues, but the possibility is always there. But we do try to mitigate that as much as possible.
Yes, and just to add on to that, any event that comes in and uses our facilities, there was a time when there was some bargaining, for like a better term. They said, well, we'll bring in our own power boxes and we'll bring in our own stuff and we can just plug directly into yours. Well, we were having issues because some of their equipment was not up to our standards or up to code or up to specification. So we now eliminated all that and said you need to use our equipment, which we know is certified, is up to standard, and if there's anything wrong with it, we get it replaced like right away. If they still want to get around that, we also meet with them and say, if you want to use your own power, this is what it has to be. It has to be exactly like ours, and if it's not, then you cannot use it. And we've had some people come in and try to plug in some makeshift like things, and we've gone out there and said, okay, this is not okay to our standards, and now you need to use our stuff. So we do work with them really well and make sure that they're not going to do anything that's going to impact our infrastructure. How about that?
It's just that could be staff intensive though, unless you can get them. In other words, you're spending time checking out beforehand what they're doing, and then if they do something wrong, then you got to fix it. Even if you have, the contract and everything else, you still got to deal with it. So, I was just asking, it sounds like maybe the situation's getting better because if you're using the same vendors or whatever, then they'll know they can't bring their off-code items, et cetera, or the whatever. So if it's getting better, fine, but if not, then I see that is another possible problem.
Commissioner Bagwell?
So I want to say we struggle with another component that deals with this and with what Commissioner Glenn was discussing, because whether some people recognize it or not, probably not from this committee level, the city also subsidizes some of those events that you were talking about through another committee. And so part of that issue, and it's a struggle. I'm not going to say anything different to any of you, right? It's you're trying to balance what's the community need, wants, desires, what gains do you have, what's the benefit to the community as a whole, versus, and it's a fine line to all of that. But we also, again, we do subsidize most of those events that you were talking about. So it's not that the event doesn't occur, but in redevelopment lately, we finally had to say something else too. Those all charge a fee. So I'm not convinced that the event won't take place. I find it different from those that host an event with no charge, versus one that charges. And so I don't know if we want to say a nonprofit versus a commercial. I don't know if our break point is actually a free event that you're trying to have the community come to support versus the one you gave an example, Taste of Downtown, charges a $40 ticket. Could they charge $42 and cover the costs themselves? And I don't necessarily know the answer, but I think that's on the redevelopment side. One of the issues we've been struggling with is just because it's a nonprofit doesn't mean it's a for-profit activity that they're doing to raise money and yes, it's for a superb cause, but they do have the ability to charge a ticket and a fee. And so do you see a difference between events with fees and events without fees?
I definitely see a difference between the two, but if you're going to raise fees for some of those events, which are fundraising for a service that the city can't provide or doesn't provide, then you're going to have fewer people attending them. Charging $40 for an event versus $60 for an event, you're going to lose people. It's a simple issue of supply and demand, and there's many events on this which are no-charge events, which I would say, why are we not charging them for their no-charge events, like someone's baptism or a quinceañera, or, again, stands in front of Nevada Day, which is a free event, but to have it in front of a business where it benefits that business, it makes no sense that we wouldn't charge for those services, or at least have it be a part of the package they're paying for when they rent a specific facility. If that's the case, that's the case. Or you add it as an extra charge. But again, other events, even though, like you say, they're fundraisers for nonprofits, you start adding on extra costs and expenses to them, their fundraiser, the cost for it goes up. All of a sudden, it gets to a point where it's like, why even have the fundraiser? And maybe that should be the case with a couple of them, but with others, where they've been part of the tradition here in the city for so long, you'd hate to see them get to a point where they're going to be sparsely attended because the costs go up, or because they can't have the event because the costs have gone up.
I did want to point out, too, that our current fee structure, any nonprofit that rents our facilities gets 75% off. They're pretty much, we end up definitely putting in way more after you put in maintenance and labor or whatever. In the end, we're definitely providing a lot of support in addition to the equipment costs for the labor to support their events. So, there is a huge community benefit for that, and something that we're proud to provide. But we do, I think, need to provide some sort of parameters on how much we can provide, is all I'm really saying. How many events maybe, or to what extent. Maybe we just adjust certain things, like a hybrid approach, so it's not so negatively impactful to the staff, but then those events can still continue. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think it's a really good discussion that we're having.
Yeah, a suggestion as we're looking into this would be maybe ask RSVP, because they put on those huge events, but it is their fundraiser. Yes, they're getting a discount, but they're not charging. You walk into the fair, the carnival. It's only when you buy beer or just, play the games or whatever, or take a ride, that, they're making any money. So if they start charging, I don't even know how they do that to prevent people from coming in. They'd have to fence the whole thing off or something. But to me, that's kind of a situation that I think bears looking into, because it is, a major service in this town. And that is a major source of their revenue. So, but it's also a major impact.
Well, and just one other, then how are we consistent throughout, right? Because I don't want to pick one nonprofit or charity over another. And I think that we have some of that going on too, that if you're this one, you can have everything, but a new one can't get in and can get nothing because they're not tried and true. They're not the event that's been here for 20 years. They're not. And so I think I really appreciate we're having this discussion, which is really why I want to bring the item, because I think we need help really coming up with a good policy or procedure on what is all of them entitled to, not just this one or just that one. And kind of like a decision tree, right? If you're this, you get that, and if you're that, you get this. And so I think a hybrid will probably be what we end up with, but I would really appreciate any help you guys can do to help both situations, right? How do we either replace the equipment, do a fund, decide which things can be done in the community, in the commercial area, because, you know, you're also not supposed to compete with a private business either that can, so how do we balance the balloons? And so any great suggestions you guys can do, we appreciate it.
And we have had some stage use go down. Now that we have McFadden Plaza, it's a permanent stage. So that's actually been really beneficial for us. We do have responsibilities at McFadden, and so that's increased in other manners, but we're not, that permanent stage has replaced, you know, us hauling it downtown quite a bit for certain events. So that's been a really nice addition. So that's been a good solution to some of our challenges. I worry about those large-scale special, like, stages with the lighting, with all that, where the liability is incurred, where maybe that should be a professional business that maybe provides that, but maybe the smaller scale stuff like the power boxes and the things like that for our parks that seem more reasonable but do provide a lot of support for these events so they can occur in a safe, you know, and affordable manner.
Jennifer, Lori, I would ask, what direction or assistance are you looking for from the commission tonight as far as this item is concerned?
Well, it kind of took a little different turn than I anticipated, but I think in a great way. And I think it's a discussion that's not over and we need to continue. So if you can give us some direction on what other information we can gather for you to kind of continue this discussion at maybe our next meeting, and we can kind of continue on with that. I did write down, you know, you wanted to know what the impacts to some of these events are if there's some of these services we can't provide. So we can reach out to some of our partners, maybe not all of them, but maybe get an overview of what that might mean for them. What is their budgets like? Things like that. We can also try to provide maybe a cost analysis. So if it's a small stage or a bleacher, you know, what does that cost? What are the other providers in the region? Is there one? Is there 20? You know, is there choices? So if one's booked up, is there no other choice? I don't know. You know, and we're a big enough community now where you've got competing events. So we want to make sure that these events still continue. And also we talked about equipment life, budget priorities. Maybe we can come back to you with an analysis of our equipment and what that would be to replace that.
Also, what I think would be helpful is if some private companies out there provide the same services, maybe we could see how much they charge in comparison to what we charge.
I was curious, does some of this have to do with that asset inventory you were talking about putting together? But I think that's probably for me the biggest one, because when you're talking about stuff's getting wear and tear, some isn't really intended for doing what we're doing with it. So part of that, I think that asset inventory, what we have, what it's going to take to replace it with something that's more adequate, I think that would help. And then maybe then the priority of these would change, because I don't think we want to treat everybody fairly, but for me it's hard to look at this list and try to understand, like, is it just the bleachers that are really giving us a hard time? Do we just need to get some new sweet bleachers and then we're going to take that on ourselves, or what's it going to cost to go outside and you know, sub it out on a pretty normal basis, it looks like, based on what I see on the sheet here. But yeah, that's probably the biggest, I think, the toughest thing for me to decipher right now.
Commissioner Glenn?
Yeah, a couple things that got mentioned earlier, and I just want to, one, I think Commissioner Bagwell, you had talked about for any revenue that's brought in to Parks and Rec that we might, or set aside a portion of that to pay for either maintenance or depreciation. And I think that's a wonderful idea. I know that's been an issue because it just goes back to the general fund. That money doesn't come back to the services that Parks and Rec provides, or the wear and tear on equipment and fields. And the other thing, and I brought this up before, a real pet peeve of mine, and I don't know if it's being addressed with the Visitors Bureau agreement. I get really personally angry when outside for-profit entities, or even nonprofit that are outside entities, not part of our community, come here and are able to use our services and our fields and facilities for free without having any blood in the game at all. I do think that they need to be required to pay something, at least, as some sort of, to maintain the fields. And the one I specifically know about, I know is All World. It gets me very upset that they come here and they can do whatever they want. And I know the Visitors Bureau just covers all their fees, but they personally have no stake in the game. I mean, I think I'm correct in that, am I not?
So for that example, groups such as All World don't pay the rental fee. So we are out that revenue from the city. The Visitors Bureau does cover all of their direct costs, so if there's porta potties or bleachers or overtime with staff, they will pay for. We can charge them for seasonal staff. We can charge them for our costs for inmates. Those are not free. Things of that nature that are all direct costs. But if it was a facility rental, someone that wasn't part of that agreement, they would come in, they would rent our facility, they would pay for that fee, and that money would go into the general fund. So I think the argument is, those users of that facility are contributing to the city in other ways. They're purchasing items that's going towards sales tax. There's, their heads in beds. They're, sleeping in that facility at hotels, and that room tax is what's paying for the direct costs. So there is definitely a correlation. I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or otherwise, but that's sort of the arrangement we have right now. But that doesn't mean we couldn't look at that in the future and try to adjust that and maybe have a portion of that go toward our infrastructure preservation. I know that's something that City of Sparks is really doing, especially with things like they have the rib cook-off. You have, I don't know, hundreds and thousands of people that go to that event over the course of the year. Well, the impacts to Victorian Square and Sparks from that, even just that one event alone, is really significant. All of those medians, people are trampling, and breaking things. So they've set aside a portion of the fee that they use to rent that facility toward that infrastructure. So that same concept that Supervisor Bagwell is doing, that might be something that we do for the revenue that comes in for the equipment. Maybe a percentage of that equipment revenue goes in a fund to replace the equipment. I mean, I don't know if we can work with finance to try to set something up like that as well. So maybe we break that down further so we can be able to continue to provide that service, and we're setting aside like a depreciation concept.
This is probably far in the future, but in terms of the impact on Mills and Fuji, being overloved, et cetera, we have talked in the past about having an events park. It would be very nice if we could have something like that and put those kinds of things, the car shows, the carnivals, et cetera, in a place where hopefully the turf is such that it can handle it and doesn't, impact our other parks so much. So, maybe in a future time we could talk about, how we get the land or how we do all that. I don't know, but it would be nice to have.
David?
Yeah, I just want to add. A couple things from the operational side of this. I think there's a lot of great conversation that's going on here, and it's kind of, again, why we brought it forward and why we want to bring this up, because to go back to Commissioner Glenn, we do take pride in providing services and providing facilities and going above and beyond other, let's say, other cities and other departments within our area. So having said that, I think that a hybrid approach might be good, because there are some services that we do provide that are what we call special services. Sure, anybody can clean the restroom, anybody can empty a trash. We can hire somebody to come in and put up, let's see, bleachers and stuff like that. But we really take pride in our facilities, and especially our sports complex and how much that they're used, that the people that we have working out there are very capable, and they do things a certain way. And those things, you can't just say, okay, you can bring in anybody off the street and say, okay, maintain these fields during a tournament. So that's a service that we continue to provide to those tournaments coming in, because we know what it takes to maintain them. We know how easy they can get misused and abused. And when that happens, the amount of work and time, effort, and materials that's got to be put back into it to get them back up is a lot. And we understand that. So we take pride in being the ones out there. You go to other facilities, and like Jen mentioned before, there is setups where you rent the facility, you come in, you're responsible for trash, you're responsible for the maintaining of the fields, of the property, of the infrastructure. Well, that's where we go above and beyond. Yes, rent the facility, but you're going to rent it. We're going to provide this now. And that's where, at the beginning in 2006, and I think in Exhibit D, it shows, where our parks crew salaries and wages were then. And we had a lot of staff then, but we didn't have a lot of events that we do now. And we've kind of seen this correlation where during the recession and some cuts, where our salary and wages have gone down and the events have gone up, and so now we're doing this, and we're still providing that above and beyond service, but with a smaller staff. And so but this has been great, because I think that probably, like Jen said, the hybrid might be the best approach. We do have equipment out there that takes 4 to 5 of our staff to set up, and it usually takes 3 hours, so you're talking 12 to 15 man hours to set that up. Well, there's equipment out there now that you hook it up to the back of a truck, you drop it off, it takes one person, he goes out, he has a remote control, pushes a button, everything unfolds, voila, presto, it's there. Right now we're spending 4 or 5 of our staff to having to do that. So that's why when I talked about earlier, we're kind of at a tipping point here in which direction that we want to go. I think we still want to provide that A+ service, but I think that we also need to look at our infrastructure. And yeah, we are doing in the asset management, not only in our infrastructure, like Commissioner Long, but we're also doing it on our equipment as well. So we're hoping to have a entire picture of our parks, the playgrounds, restroom facilities, bleachers, stages, mowers, everything is going to be in that package when it's completed, let's see, January.
Jen, obviously we need to revisit this. When would be best realistically for us to do so, in our December meeting or our February meeting? How much time do you need to gather all the information we've requested?
I would like to have this at our December meeting. Maybe we might not have all of the answers for you, but we could at least get some of it and continue that conversation. And it may take us a while to figure this out. And, we'll continue to plug away. This is, we're nearing the end of our busy season. So it's a great time to try to figure all that out, and before budgets. I don't want to stop the conversation and then we start budgets and then we're working backward again. And I don't want to do that. So we'll do some additional homework with staff, and we'll try to get some more answers and more information for you. And if there's something in the meantime that you think of that might be helpful to this conversation, just send me an email and we'll try to figure that out.
I'll just give you one, since on the one with the salaries on that exhibit, you're talking about a wage component and you're giving us the total wage. What you're not giving me is, may I have the actual full-time FTEs? I'd rather see it as positions. So if you're telling me we had a reduction, I need context to it. So did you lose 2 park maintenance workers? I need more context to that, because I need to make sure it's not a loss because we actually moved people out of one department, put them in another department. I just need more context on that one, if you're going to be updating that, please.
Sure, and then we can divide that into full-time and seasonal.
Commissioner Curtis?
And the other thing is there's a lot of great minds out there and a lot of enthusiasm. There could be a lot more events coming. So I don't know how you might hear about that, but it's something to consider, that we're not just dealing with this amount. There may be more.
Exactly.
I think one thing that David pointed out, the service that we provide specifically at our sports complexes is above and beyond the entire region, and it's really set the bar high, and it's the reason that the Visitors Bureau is able to bring in so many events and so many traveling tournaments that actually are paying. So I've worked for Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County, and it doesn't even come close to the services provided here, at least at the sports complexes, and it's really something to be proud of, which is great. How, can we do that everywhere? I don't know. I would hate to see that service level at the sports complexes go down. That's really unique in the region and something special. The stage thing, you know, there's a lot of other providers. The technical ability for maintenance of sports fields is really hard. We have a sports field coordinator position open right now. We're trying to fill that, and it's difficult to fill that. It's difficult to find that expertise. So, you know, we'd be proud to continue that moving forward.
Any more questions or comments from the commissioners? All right, any public comment?
I actually just have one comment, not as public, but the Visitors Bureau is now the Carson City Culture and Tourism Authority, just so everybody knows that we're talking about the same thing.
Okay, thank you so much, Iris. All right, and on that note, let's move on to item E for possible action. Review, discussion, and a possible recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding submission of a recreational trails program grant application for Phase 1 of rehabilitation of the path system in Long Ranch Park. Jennifer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to keep this short. I know we're getting pretty late into the evening.
Motion on the last one?
Huh?
Motion on the last one?
We're just going to table it and continue the discussion. Okay. Iris was asking if we had action on the last one.
No,
we're just going to keep the discussion moving.
I remember now.
Yes, fact-finding mission. We're on it. So we have a recreation trails program opportunity grant. We apply for these almost every year. It's federal money that's passed through locally through the state. Nevada State Parks manages this program and this fund. And one of the components is for maintenance. And we've fully recognized that while we haven't done our complete asset inventory, I mean, something that I've observed on site and I get continual calls and complaints about is the state of the trail system at Long Ranch Park. It's completely deteriorating. We have potential safety concerns, and this is the funding source that we can go after to try to you know, match our existing funding that was put in the capital improvement budget, identified for asphalt and concrete paved path replacement, and try to match that and, you know, utilize this grant opportunity. In your packet, knowing that we had a bit of a mess up there, I really wanted a professional to come in and look at it and try to prioritize, you know, what are the worst areas, what should we do first, what's the cost analysis of that, how can we phase this in a thoughtful manner. And so that's the exhibits that you have from Loomis and Associates, and there's some site photos in there about the condition. You also have that Exhibit A, which is the cost analysis of the repairs and replacement that's needed throughout that entire area. So you have over $500,000 of work that needs to be done just in Long Ranch alone. So what we'd like to do is we have funds set aside. We requested $144,000 in our capital improvement budget, and we were funded a little bit over $70,000. So we want to try to use that $70,000 as much as we can and leverage that funding and try to turn that into more money utilizing this grant component. So we have found out that there is a public works project on the planned in the 2018 to 2020 timeframe on the north end of Long Ranch Park. So we probably wouldn't want to select that as our first phase because we wouldn't want to put in new paved paths and then have it ripped out to get that water line in. They would obviously replace it, but that would be a lot of wasted resources. So we would look at the other sections probably in our first phase. But depending on the funding that we would be awarded, should we be awarded the grant, will also help, dictate which section that we do. I do see us probably going after some community development block grant funds for the ADA access points to the path, potentially down the road, and that could be a potential funding source as well, at least for the wheelchair access ramps.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Commissioner Curtis?
Yeah, just a couple. You've already clarified a couple of things, but this is strictly for trails because, we've, in all the emails, all the people, et cetera, they've identified some other problems there, like with the landscaping, but it's just to fix the trails at this point.
This funding source has to be dedicated to trail system, so, yeah, any other projects associated with it wouldn't qualify.
Commissioner Bagwell?
So why this trail system? Is this one, did we rate this one as the worst condition?
We haven't finished our asset inventory, but I can tell you, just being on the ground, we have some serious potential safety concerns where we may actually have to remove sections. And
we don't have that issue in other ones that were trails.
We do.
Oh. No, again, you're seeing where I'm at here is I just want to know why this one versus, because I had a discussion with someone else, I get equally the number of emails for another area. And it's important that we get some things on the record for the public to understand. We only have the limited ability, and why did we pick this one versus we picked another one, because I got angry emails from individuals saying, why can't you just get your backhoe out there? This would be a 4-hour fix. I'm like, no, it really wouldn't be. And there's a lot more permits and other things that no one recognizes. But it's important to me that if we're going to recommend this one and this park, that again, it be based on a valid rationale, right? It's not just because it's because, one, we thought the money was sufficient enough to meet the projects. Why didn't we have Loomis do this on the other ones? I mean, what did we use to make the decision that this is the right place to
Part of this started last year during our CAP. We discussed this park in particular and setting aside funding for asphalt and concrete paved path repairs, recognizing that, yes, across the entire park system, we have deteriorating, asphalt and concrete path infrastructure that's crumbling. But I can tell you, I've been to every one of our parks, and this is one of the worst. I can't tell you it is the worst, but it is one of the worst. And I am concerned on a safety standpoint that if we don't start plugging away at it, that we're going to have a bigger issue. So knowing that, we did retain the services of Loomis because we need that professional guidance of what we actually need to get on the ground. And it's a good investment. It provides a really good exhibit for a grant to be successful. I've used them before in previous projects. They do a great job. They really gave us a good, thoughtful analysis. And I said, even if we don't get grant money, what can we even do with our existing funding on the ground? We need to know how far it goes. But I want to make sure that every dollar we have, that no stone goes unturned, that we can leverage that funding to try to get more work done. So it's not, probably the exact approach that you want, but until our asset inventory is done, I still don't want to sit by and then let a grant funding opportunity go by.
And I don't want to suggest that. I just want us to be thoughtful here too, right? Mm-hmm. That when I get stopped in the grocery store and somebody says, why did you put it there? I think ours is worse. I want a thoughtful answer. I want to be able to say they're all in bad shape and this is just the first one we're tackling, or this one had the most safety concerns that we thought we would have to close the paths. I mean, that it's important to me to be able to have some accountability for where we're going and why. That's all.
I completely agree. And this proposal with the dollar amount that I'm proposing won't use our entire pot of funding all into this park and only this park. We won't have a lot left, but we'll have some left to address some other safety issues as we discover them or as they occur. This is outside the FEMA list, so there is a large section that was damaged through the flooding. We are going to tackle that portion, and that's not in your pictures, through the FEMA dollars. So that's going to be done this fall it's already, I can't remember if it's out to bid or about to go out to bid and what the timing is, but that work will get constructed, late fall, early winter through the FEMA dollars. So that immediate safety risk that's currently closed will be addressed.
Commissioner Lehman?
So yeah, for argument's sake, when the person from the grocery store comes and asks you, where are the trails in worse condition? Because these are pretty bad. I mean, I've been around on all the trails too, and I don't know where they would be worse. When we're talking asphalt trails, there's dirt trails that are pretty bad, but when you're talking asphalt, this is right up at the top for.
I would say it's probably, in my opinion, it has to be in the top one, 2, or 3. We do have some sections of some of our older parks, like Carriage Square and some others, where we've had to go in and remove sections or grind down because we have, tree roots pushing up sidewalks or pathways. So we do have, I think, some sections, but I would say overall, the entire asphalt path system is failing there.
So I think that's exactly why, yeah, there's the answer. These other areas are kind of limited where they're failing, whereas you got 5 miles of asphalt that's failing up at Long Ranch. So that would be why it would be a depressing issue.
And this isn't going to solve the problem, this one grant. It's a phased approach. We're going to have to keep going after it. We can go as long as land and water conservation funds aren't eliminated from the federal budget. I think we're all actively waiting for that federal budget to be approved. The natural disasters across the country are going to impact federal funding. It's happening right now. We have a 90-day stay on FEMA projects, so the ones that have been assigned a project number and funding will move forward, but we have a handful of projects that have a 3-month delay, and why the feds try to figure out what they're up against with these federal disaster recovery. So that is potentially going to impact some of our FEMA recovery. I hope not, but we're much better off than a lot of other people across the country. So we're going to still try to plug away and find other ways to fund it, the remaining work, but I'd rather start than not do anything.
So the portion that was damaged in the flooding, you're going to give us an update on the next item, I believe. Is that right? Staff updates?
Yeah, we can talk about that. And that's, I think relevant here. We are either out to bid now or going out to bid for that portion at Long Ranch. So that is going to be constructed this fall. Or reconstructed.
So that's still going to be done before the snow flies is the idea?
Mm-hmm.
And then one other question I had is, these are asphalt paths. Is there, in the biz, is there a lifespan on what an asphalt path will last? Because, yeah, these are 20 years old, so.
I would say 20 to 25 years would be pretty typical. I wasn't there when they were built, so I'm not sure how well they were built, if they had proper compaction and base, and what the mix was like and the weather. So that's always a factor as well. We would love to put concrete in. That would be the ideal way to go, but it's going to double your price. So.
And concrete's harder. The people who use these trails, honestly, concrete's harder on them. But, on these asphalt, just to answer your question, a 20 to 25-year life is a reasonable estimate, but the kind of equipment they use on an asphalt path versus, say, a paved road is different. It's lighter, so you don't get the same levels of even compaction as you do. So you don't expect a life expectancy to be quite as long. They just, they just don't have the control they have over the bigger stuff. But it doesn't mean you're not going to get 20 years out of it. Some of that involves how you maintain it as well, though.
Okay, that's good to know. The west part of the development there is probably 20-year-old paths, whereas the east part is probably 25. And kind of just part of the discussion, the private area up there called the Meadows, which is private, they maintain their own paths. They redid all their paths maybe 4 or 5 years back. So.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, Jen, what do you need from us for this? A motion?
A motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors.
All right.
This will be going to them on Thursday.
All right.
I'd like one today so that we can vote on it on Thursday.
All right, well, let's see if we have any public comment. If not, then I'll entertain a motion. CK? Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item. Would somebody like to make one?
I can do it. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors the approval of a submission of a recreational trails program grant for Phase 1 of rehabilitation of the path system in Long Ranch Park.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
A second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Move on to staff updates, discussion only. And Jen, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm going to...
You're having way too much fun.
No.
We just did E.
Everyone's tired.
E is E.
You just approved E.
You just approved E.
We're on 4A. This one doesn't have a, it's just an insert. Hold on.
That's under 4A.
That's under the director's report. I did not skip over it, no? Gotcha.
Thank you.
All right, this is
Shall we try it again?
Sure, thank you. Jennifer Budge, Parks Director. So this is the potpourri of items, so we'll just try to be as quick as possible. So we do have 3 positions that are vacant in the department. To give you an update, Patty Liebesbeck was promoted to Department Business Manager. Daria Worth is now working for the state of Nevada, so that was to fill her position. And then, so to fill Patty's position, we're making an offer this week to fill that office specialist, so we'll be excited to have someone there. Patty's been wearing multiple hats and doing a lot of work, so we really appreciate all that. Also, we have a sports field coordinator position that's still open, and then a recreation program supervisor position, which is for our youth and inclusion. So that one is open right now. So we're hoping to get some good candidates there. To give you an update for that, 2 of our 3 AmeriCorps positions are filled. So we have our outreach and education coordinator already on board, and then our PR and marketing coordinator, and then our volunteer coordinator will come on in the end of November. So we're excited to have that moving forward. For flood damage and repairs, I'm just going to kind of whip through these, so just stop me if you have any questions, just in the interest of time. But we're moving forward. Riverview Park, the bid was awarded by the Board of Supervisors. That is probably the one we get the most calls about and concerns. That one should be starting work any week now. And that'll be the first of probably 2 to 3 phases for Riverview. It's the most western section, the majority of the trail section. As we go further east toward the river, there's potentially some collaboration with the Army Corps of Engineers and some more complicated engineering that needs to take place. So this is the first, but the majority of the trail system, which will be great to see that happening. We've had a lot of calls about the tennis courts at Centennial Park. I did confirm, I know Supervisor Bagwell has gotten a lot of calls about those, and so have we. We did confirm that the tennis courts are in the FEMA list. I'm not sure if that's been an awarded number or where that is with that 90-day stay. I'm going to try to find that out next. But it is for 2 of the courts. I am concerned about the cost estimate that was put in there because it's pretty significant damage. So we'll continue to work with FEMA and try to get that moving forward. I do have some other ideas. We don't have any existing funding identified in our CAP this year for tennis, but it was on kind of the horizon. There's opportunities for USTA grants with the Tennis Association, some other funding that we might be able to tap into. So I want to get that FEMA stuff confirmed first before we come up with a funding strategy on how to resolve all of the other issues. So that's pretty much it on flooding. We did provide an updated information sheet on the website. So when you go in there, all of the current FEMA projects that are either going out to bid and a timeline and everything like that is available. So if you go to carson.org, go to the parks page, there's an updated flood page with all that information. Any flood questions? Okay. we're exhausted with flooding. That's all I can say. I'm going to skip over that report and we'll go back and do that last. So the Nevada Department of Wildlife and the Nevada Rifle Association, we are pursuing grants, and we have pursued grants to do improvements at the rifle range. The restroom, the vault toilet restroom grant, we did get that. We hired a contractor. The contractor basically said they weren't going to do the project, and he walked away. So we had to get new grants renewed based on the timing with NDOW and just working through their process. We're just waiting on the paperwork, and then, we'll get that back out again. So we've submitted everything on our end. We're not the holdup. We're just waiting on that. And as soon as we get that paperwork, we can get that vault toilet restroom. I was hoping it was going to be this fall. I don't know why we don't have that yet. It's just a really cumbersome process. I think because it's federal pass-through money, there's just some complications. So we'll get it. We just have to be patient.
So we could be actually delayed, even though if it gets too long, could be right back in the same boat.
I don't think so, because of where their fiscal year falls. I think we'll be okay. I think we'll get something. This is something we can construct this winter. It's not a temperature-dependent project. The moment we get that official grant award again for the vault toilet, we can move forward. So we don't have to worry about waiting till spring and all of that stuff. So it'll be a project we can construct during the winter, which will be great. There's an NRA grant we're going to pursue. Oh, actually, there's a second NDOW grant for berm enhancement that we already submitted. We did get verbal approval, so we're waiting on that too. So there'll probably be 2 projects that'll come forward at the same time. Some safety improvements on the berms and how those are lined up. An NRA grant we're submitting that's due in November. It's a pretty small threshold, so it doesn't really require any approval of the Board of Supervisors for that application, but it would be for signage and wayfinding at the rifle range. When you go there, it's very difficult to know where to go, what type of rifle you can use where, safety issues, just orienting yourself to the site really needs some improvement. So we're going to submit a grant. It requires no match, which is great. So we're going to we're working with the Rifle and Pistol Club to prioritize those signs and what would be on there. Programs and events, we've had a lot going on. We had the community garage sale. It's our first ever. We had it at the community center. We had 30 spots sold in the parking lot, and then we had 28 or 30 people participate at home and have garage sales there, and we had an interactive map, and really to just try to encourage people to clean up their properties and provide an avenue for them to do that. That was really great. The same day we had a skate competition. We had between 75 and 100 participants at the skateboard competitions, which was great. And also we had the pooch plunge at the pool, and we had 100 dogs there. And that's a fundraiser for Cassie, and it's a really good partnership. So we've had a lot going on. We have Halloween events. You have activity guides in front of you. That's going to be the first ever. We're really trying to get back to providing community-focused events that are very low cost to run and, operated through partnerships.
Jennifer, can you briefly tell us about the movie in the park in August? How successful was that?
Oh, that was great. It was, I want to say, over 400 people attended the movie in the park, and Washoe County was really generous and let us borrow their screen and their projection equipment, but it was fantastic. So we had a great turnout there. We also had 2 dive-in movies now at the swimming pool, and they've had about 125 in attendance at each of those. So we're really adding to the choices that we have, a variety and offering in our community. So there's a lot in that activity guide. We'll have a winter one coming out. Our AmeriCorps staff have been great. They just did a sunset hike at Prison Hill. We have like a fall colors hike coming up, working with the rangers and trying to provide some more interpretive opportunities as well. And you'll see this winter our rangers start to develop some programs. They're working with the AmeriCorps to try to develop some programming, being able to go out to the schools and just be more interactive, because we really haven't had that opportunity with our ranger staff before. See, and then you also have in your packet the Board of Supervisors action items, and then I provided a copy of the 2017 NRP Agency Performance Report. when you look at that, I want you to use caution when you look at these numbers. This was the first time Carson City has ever submitted their numbers and information into the system to try to see where we measure up with other agencies our size. How they capture the numbers is a little different than how our budget is set up. If you look at our developed acres, that's our developed park acres, but that's not all the areas that we take care of. So that doesn't include like our non-turf landscaping areas, all the medians, all the rights of way, also the city facilities and the acreage that we maintain outside of our park system. So some of these numbers, I just want to give you some caution. They're not totally dead on, but I think it's a good starting point on the things that we need to track and look at and how we measure what we're doing. So that's why I submitted our numbers, and I wanted to try to at least start looking at data-driven decisions for you guys to consider. There's other things that we're tracking now. We have an incident report system, so we're tracking how many homeless camps we have and acts of vandalism in our parks. And I'd like to look at how many acres per parkland that we have per park maintenance worker and some other ways to capture what we're doing, not just, the budgets and the cost covering. So I think there's a lot of other things we want to consider with the services that we're providing. So I will be happy to try to answer any questions on this report, but it is a bit confusing, so.
I'll make it very quick. I totally agree with you, and I'm hoping that if anybody from the public or Board of Supervisors or anybody's looking at this, they'll definitely take in hand that this thing is a work in progress, to say the least. I mean, I went through, if you could see my sheets, I got questions all over the place. In some cases we're spending $5 million more than the 75 percentile. So it's like, why do we need any budget money? I mean, it's nonsensical at this point, and hopefully, as you say, it'll get better. But
and the data that went in here
don't take it seriously, please.
Was like the MAC money, so that was like $8 million. So there's definitely it ebbs and flows. But I think some things that we should really be proud of, the amount of parks that we have per capita is really amazing, above and beyond most other communities our size. So that's a real commitment from the community about wanting to have a lot of parks. And, we want to maintain them well. So those are the things that, we're trying to gear for. How many parks do you have per 1,000 population? That's a standard measurement across the country. So there's a lot we can be proud of. There's a lot we need to work on. But I think it's just a starting point in trying to capture data. I think if we we're going to resubmit our numbers every year so we can start to see trends. But we'll have to make adjustments because obviously these are very skewed in some areas.
Commissioner Curtis?
Yeah, I was wondering, could you make an announcement about the therapy pool and the fact that it's closed so that people know? It's closed for a month. They're doing the roof, right?
Yes, so it's definitely a safety issue. We're doing roof repairs on the facility, and because of the structure of the roof, that one's a lot lower. We didn't want an imminent safety risk for our public. So just the therapy pool is closed. We've relocated a lot of those activities to other pools within our facility to try to accommodate that. But there is, a temporary closure, and I apologize, I don't have the estimated date for completion. I didn't bring that with me, but I can send that out to everyone.
All right, thank you so much. All right, let's move on to members' announcements and requests for information. Anybody? What?
We've overwhelmed ourselves on that one, yeah.
Well, announcement.
Okay.
Okay, it's kind of fun.
Oh, we like those.
Yes, we do. For the last year, I've been working with Wangnima family, and we have cataloged all of their Pinkstone buildings as well as their commercial buildings in Northern Nevada, Northern California, and elsewhere. This Saturday at the Sturt Baptist Church, we're going to present the presentation. We're going to start off with a potluck meet and greet, and then we'll have the presentation. I have several speakers lined up, but the family doesn't know, so I won't tell you on the record. And the minister, the pastor Shelley Ellison has graciously allowed us the use of the bell. Anybody who wants, who attends, is able to ring the bell at the church tower. So if you're out there and you have nothing to do Saturday, come with us.
Fun. Okay, on November 10th at 3 p.m. at Fuji Park, if you would like to come and enjoy a flag retirement ceremony, we have over 2,000 flags that will build into a pyramid and retire. So it's truly Veterans Day. Yeah. So I just
the flags collected at the
in the bins. Yeah. So the children of the American Revolution put bins all around the city, and that they collected 2,000 flags. So if you'd like to come, and I just think it's a real touching.
What time?
Yeah, when is it again?
November 10th at 3 o'clock. The Friday, because it's a holiday for everyone. So everyone should be able to come and enjoy it. Anyway.
Commissioner Glenn?
Yeah, this Friday night from 6 to 9 at Fuji Park Pavilion is the Carson Capital's annual Beers and Brats fundraiser. It's $20, and it's all you can eat, drink beer and brats. I believe Dave was actually, oh, he left. I believe he was actually president and kind of rekindled the organization. But if anyone, specifically anyone here, would like to buy tickets, I have tickets for sale.
What was it again?
Carson Capitals baseball. They're a nonprofit travel baseball team here in Carson City.
Commissioner Cassiopo?
See, now we're on a roll.
We just started.
Sorry.
I didn't have anything.
No, that's just because they're next door, and I saw the folks in the audience. But Western Nevada Musical Theater Company is putting on Beauty and the Beast, which is going to run on the weekends from November 4th through the 19th. And they always just do a top-notch production. So anybody who's interested,
Tickets are going fast.
Tickets are going to go really fast. In fact, they've actually added a couple of shows within that time frame. So
great.
It'll be well worth it. It's going to be a nice production.
Any other announcements? Well, then we'll move on to the report from the school board liaison.
Just two quick things I'll mention. The school district is working with the developer, Blackstone Development, on the Lomper property. There's land that's dedicated for a school site, and there's negotiations going on as to how the school might acquire that. So there's I'll say a tentative agreement in place right now that seems to be amenable to the developer and the school district, and the city has been a part of discussions. So it looks like we're, no immediate plans for it, but it would put the school district in a position to be able to consider another school around, at least planning for it, say 2019, 2020. And it's just going to depend on what the need is at that time. But right now, the projections are, well, right now we're at capacity in almost all of our schools, and we just don't want to get into a situation, say, that Washoe County got into, where all of a sudden there's just way too many students to put in the buildings we have. So, and with the development going around, this made a lot of sense for us to work with the developers. So, to their credit, they have been working with the school district. And then I just wanted to reiterate, Jennifer brought it up, that Carson City skate and scooter competition. I've had a lot of kids in the school district come up to me and thank me for putting it on. And I said, well, you're thanking the wrong person, but you're welcome. But they really, that was, when you talk about a inexpensive community event, the kids just loved it, and I think they're really looking forward to this happening, year after year if it can. So anyway, thank you.
I think all 3 events that day was superb in Mills Park, because I think they were all like practically no cost, every single one of them. So
the recreation division really deserves all the credit for that. Mike Freeman at the pool, Scott Chapman helped put the skate competition on, and with the Wheelhouse, that was our co-sponsor, and Dan Earp did the community garage show. It was really a team effort, but these were really well-attended events for very low cost and really limited staff resources, and they were great.
And you even had little soccer kids out there practicing their soccer. The entire park was hopping. It was a great day. Yeah, it was a good day.
On to B, report from Carson City Foundation for Parks and Recreation, Parks for Paws Public Outreach Update. Commissioner Curtis?
Thank you. Just a comment on the skate. Is there any chance in the future we could do that at the Marv Texera Pavilion? I'd sure like to see that used for more things. And wouldn't it make sense to be skating?
No, it's the skateboard.
This was at the skateboard park, so they use all of the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought it was roller skating. Okay, never mind. Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll be very brief. We had a meeting on September 14th. It was pretty well advertised, but not as well advertised as I had hoped. But we did get a few people turn out at the meeting about dog parks, and if they wanted to form a group, such as what used to be Parks for Paws, to support dog parks and try to get some improvements, if they were interested in improvements, and definitely they were. But nobody stepped up to say, yeah, we want to do the group, and I'm going to lead it and all that. So we pretty much at the foundation at our meeting a week later have dropped the idea of having a dog park group, although when we had the open house at the Wangamia House Sunday 2 weeks ago, people showed, a lady did show up saying she might be willing to lead it. So that's not totally dead, but it's pretty much, we're now focusing as a foundation on doing something else, and this may be the beginning of the way we might want to handle projects through the foundation. So what we did is we talked about parks, and what we decided to do is use David Navarro's very nice list that he presented at our meeting on September 14th, which was a list of improvements as the Parks Department saw it for Fuji and Sonoma dog parks. And that was, very much well discussed, et cetera, at that meeting. And then what we did for the open house, and I want to give David Johnson on the foundation credit for this, he turned that list into a survey, and it's in your packet. And what it is, we haven't identified the costs. We said, okay, take a look at this list and pick 5 and rank them. And so we had a few people there, and I'm hoping we can use this survey at other places too. And then what he furnished tonight to us, thanks to Laura, she brought it, is kind of, showing what the results were from that survey. And I'll have to say, like with the smoking thing, there was only a few people there, so I wouldn't say that this is a valid example of what people may be thinking, but you can kind of see what some of the trends are. And basically, what they're interested in, of course, is seeing turf at Fuji Park, the small dog park, and the big dog park. And then there were some improvements at Sonoma, and also on the list they made other suggestions. So there's other things that they would like to see, in particular at Sonoma. They want to see some kind of a pathway around it, because apparently it's kind of bumpy like this. And there were 2 ladies there at the W House on that Sunday that both had canes. They just had some kind of surgery on hips, knees, etc., and they could not walk out in the grass with their animals. So they were hoping that there'd be some kind of a pathway around. Benches have been put there, but they would like to see some more, and of course more trees, etc. So anyway, what we're thinking of doing now is at our next meeting, which is October 18th, is taking a look at this information and saying, okay, now what are we going to do with it? And hopefully build this into a process so that when, say, we have the asset management list, the foundation could say, look at, okay, it looks like Sunset Park really needs new playground equipment. And so let's use this process. Let's do a survey. And then what we talked about is possibly meeting like with service organizations. For example, it was the Nevada Kiwanis was at the meeting on the 14th, and they said, we're looking for a project. And there may be other, so, we kind of build up from there, and so that's what we're going to be talking about at our meeting on the 18th, not only just finishing up in the dog park thing and where we go from here, but then as a foundation, what are our strategic plans? What are our goals? What, besides what we're doing now, how do we put ourselves together to be a true foundation? So that's the sort of thing we're going to be talking about at our next meeting. And thanks for your list. It's very helpful.
All right, public comments? All right.
Gosh, you waited.
You're going to close the show?
We didn't wait him out.
You almost got through it. Bailey Pond is open, and it is being stocked by the Nevada Department of Wildlife, for the record. So it's begging the public to come in. If you're under 12 years of age, you fish for free. Limit 3. If you're 12 or older, you need a Nevada Department of Wildlife fishing license and trout stamp. So it's always a hit. And there's more surprises that are going to happen at Bailey Pond when the water warms, or should I say when the weather warms up, that you don't know about yet. So thank you very kindly.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. And with that, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
Do we want to go future agenda?
Oh, future agenda items. I'm just skipping ahead. I'm sorry.
I have it.
Okay. Donna?
Yeah, I just wanted, kind of following our discussion tonight, and what could be on this and what used to be on the future agenda item list was kind of a category called no date set yet. And I've got smoking policy and continuation of special events discussion, although that one you may want to put in the December meeting. But
I think that was going to go in the December one.
yeah.
So. Does anybody else have any future agenda items they'd like listed?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the Eagle Valley Trails Committee item may be ready in December, and then we have a couple policies to bring forward to you, including the parkland easements policy. That may be something that, these are items that really also involve the Open Space Advisory Committee. So there's been discussion about maybe a joint meeting to discuss those items. We're not really 100% there yet, but I'll make sure that I'm in contact with you, Madam Chair, and then with the chair of the Open Space Advisory Board, because I hate to duplicate efforts, especially if it's something we could, have a collaboration on.
Okay. Thank you so much.
What was the other? Eagle Valley Trails, and what was the other one?
A couple policies.
Parkland policies.
Parkland
And the fees
policies
would
and
involve their board as well.
Okay. So we'd have a joint meeting possibly?
Possibly.
Maybe? Okay.
I'm not 100% there yet.
Okay.
Well, when you're 100%.
All right, now you can do your motion.
All right.
We're not 100% either.
Well, we're there though. All right, now I'll entertain a motion on adjournment.
So moved.
All right, second? All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.